Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Cryptic Corpse. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious, where are you watching from, and what time is it in your part of the world? Now find your cozy spot and relax. My name is Ashley McKinnon. I'm 16 years old, and I'm about to tell you the story of what happened at my family's wilderness camp in northern Maine. The story that no one believes. The story that still gives me nightmares. It was November 1991, and winter had come early to Aroostook County. The first big snowstorm of the season was rolling in, and I was stuck at our family's stupid survival camp. 500 acres of nothing but trees, snow, and bad memories. My dad, Robert McKinnon, everyone called him Rob, started this place after he came back from the Gulf War. He was different when he returned. Jumpier, angrier sometimes. Mum said he had PTSD. He thought teaching other people how to survive in the wilderness would help him survive his own demons. Mom, Jennifer, but everyone called her Jen, was in on it too. She'd been an army medic and knew how to patch people up when they got hurt during Dad's training exercises. My brother Tyler had dropped out of college to help them run this place. He thought it was so cool. I just wanted to go back to civilization, back to my friends, back to places with actual heating and Wi-Fi. That week was supposed to be special. Dr. Michael Torres, some hotshot psychiatrist who specialized in treating veterans with PTSD, had brought a group of his patients to our camp. He thought the wilderness would help them heal or something. I remember watching them arrive from my bedroom window in our cabin. Captain Bill Harrison was the oldest, a tall guy with gray hair and perfect posture. He kept scanning the tree line like he expected enemies to jump out at any moment. Then there was Sergeant Maria Santos, who barely spoke above a whisper but had eyes that seemed to see everything. The youngest was Corporal David Kim, a former medic who kept checking and rechecking his backpack like he was afraid he'd forgotten something important. On their first night, we had dinner together in the main lodge. Dad was excited, telling stories about how the wilderness strips away all the noise of modern life. Mum watched him carefully, the way she always did when he got too worked up. Tyler was hanging on every word, but I just pushed my beans around my plate, counting the days until I could leave this frozen wasteland. That's when there was a knock. At the door, it was Elder Joseph Penobscot, an old man from the local tribe who sometimes came by to check on us. Dad respected him and always invited him in for coffee, but that night was different. Elder Joseph wouldn't come inside. He stood in the doorway, snow gathering on his shoulders, his face serious in the yellow porch light. "You have warriors here," he said, looking past Dad to the veterans sitting at our table. "The Wendigo feeds on warrior spirits. It smells the death they carry." Dr. Torres tried to explain that they were just there for therapy, but Elder Joseph shook his head. "This land is old. The spirits here are hungry. Be careful, Rob McKinnon. Your family should leave this place before the snow traps you here." Dad thanked him politely but shut the door with a laugh. "Local superstitions," he told everyone, though they make great campfire stories. The next morning, training began. Dad and Tyler took the veterans out to learn basic survival skills, building shelters, starting fires, finding food. Dr. Torres observed, taking notes and occasionally leading group discussions about how these skills related to managing trauma. I was stuck helping Mom inventory supplies in the storage shed when Tyler burst in, his face pale beneath his winter tan. "Something weird is happening," he whispered. "All the compasses are pointing wrong, towards that old Penobscot burial. Ground instead of north. And there are no animals anywhere. It's like they've all run away." Mom told him it was just the approaching storm messing with the magnetic fields or something, but I saw the worry in her eyes. That night, the temperature dropped to below zero. We all huddled in the main lodge around the big stone fireplace. Captain Harrison kept jumping at shadows, saying he could smell burning oil and gunpowder, smells from the war. Dr. Torres tried to talk him through it, saying it was just a flashback, but the captain was convinced it was real. "I think something's wrong with our food," Mom said suddenly, opening a container of beef stew she'd prepared just yesterday. The smell that came out made us all gag. It had rotted somehow, even though it had been properly stored in our freezer. We checked the rest of our supplies, all of it. Every last bit of meat, vegetables, even the canned goods, had spoiled overnight. It didn't make any sense. "We'll have to hunt," Dad decided. "There's plenty of game in these woods." But Tyler shook his head. "Dad, I'm telling you, there's nothing out there. No tracks, no sounds. It's like every animal for miles has disappeared." That's when the radio started making weird noises. Dad tried to call for help, for a supply drop at least, but all we got was static and strange whispers that might have been words in a language none of us understood. That night, the storm hit full force. The wind screamed through the pine trees, sounding almost like voices. Sergeant Santos woke everyone up, screaming about dead people calling her name from outside. We had to hold her back from running out into the blizzard. "They're out there," she kept saying. "Johnson, Martinez, all of them. They're walking in, the snow, calling me to join them." In the morning, Dad and Tyler went out to check the perimeter. The snow had stopped briefly, but the sky promised more. When they came back, Tyler pulled me aside. "Ash, you won't believe what I found near that old burial ground Elder Joseph mentioned," he whispered, his voice shaking. "Human bones, arranged like soldiers in formation. Some looked really old, but others—" He swallowed hard. "Others looked fresh." I wanted to believe he was messing with me, but Tyler wasn't the type to make up scary stories. He was too practical for that. Dr. Torres was trying to calm everyone down when Corporal Kim started freaking out. He was running around, grabbing first aid supplies, saying people were wounded and needed help, but there was no one there, at least no one the rest of us could see. Yet Kim was bandaging thin air, his hands moving with precision, becoming covered in what looked disturbingly like real blood that seemed to come from nowhere. As the day wore on, Captain Harrison started barking military orders, addressing people who weren't there. Dr. Torres couldn't get through to him. It was like he'd gone back in time, back to the war. That evening, Elder Joseph didn't return to his home in the nearby village. Dad and Tyler found him the next morning, frozen solid in the snow about a mile from our camp. He was kneeling in a prayer position, his eyes wide open, his face twisted in terror. Something was hunting us, something that fed on the trauma these soldiers carried, something that had warned Elder Joseph to stay away, and now we were trapped with it, miles from help, with another storm rolling in, and no way to call for rescue. I didn't know it then, but that was just the beginning of the nightmare at Screaming Pines. Finding Elder Joseph frozen in the snow changed everything. Dad brought his body back to camp, and we laid him in the tool shed because the ground was too frozen to bury him. Nobody said it out loud, but we all felt the same thing. We were next. That morning, the veterans wouldn't eat breakfast. Captain Harrison pushed away his plate and said, "Tastes like ashes." The others nodded. Sergeant Santos looked at her oatmeal like it was mud. "I'm so hungry," she whispered, but she wouldn't take a bite. I was starving too, but my food tasted fine. Mom and Tyler didn't seem to have any problems either. It was just Dad and the veterans who suddenly couldn't eat. "It's just stress," Dr. Torres tried to explain. "Loss of appetite is common with anxiety." But later, I caught Sergeant Santos staring at Tyler while he chopped wood. She wasn't looking at him like a person. She was looking at him like he was a hamburger. When she saw me watching, she turned away quickly, covering her mouth with her hand. Things got weirder that afternoon. I was cleaning up in the kitchen when I heard Captain Harrison talking to someone in the main room. I peeked around the corner and saw him standing at attention, reporting to nobody. but he could see someone. He kept nodding and saying yes, sir, to an empty spot by the fireplace. I backed away, bumping into Dr. Torres, who had been watching from the doorway. "It's getting worse," he whispered. "I've never seen PTSD manifest like this before. It's like their trauma is becoming physical somehow." Later, I heard Mom and Dad arguing in their room. "We need to get these people to a hospital," Mom insisted. "We can't," Dad replied. "The roads are completely snowed in and the radio is dead. We just need to keep everyone calm until the weather clears." But I knew Dad was scared too. I saw how he kept looking out the windows, how he jumped at every sound from the forest. That night, Corporal Kim started to change. I noticed it first at dinner. His fingers seemed longer, thinner. His face looked sharper, his skin tight against his bones, and his teeth. I swear they were turning yellow and pointy. No one else seemed to notice, or if they did, they didn't want to say anything. Dr. Torres kept trying to get everyone to talk about their feelings, but his voice shook when he spoke. He was scared too. Tyler found me hiding in the supply closet. "Ash, you need to see this," he said, tugging my arm. He led me to the window and pointed outside. The snow had stopped temporarily, and the moon was bright on the white ground. There, at the edge of the clearing, were footprints. But not animal. Tracks or human boots. These were barefoot prints, enormous, with long toe marks that dug deep into the snow. They circled our entire camp, like something had been pacing around us, looking for a way in. "What made those?" I whispered. Tyler shook his head. "I don't know. But they're fresh." That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind howled through the pines, sounding like screams. I thought I heard voices calling names, soldiers' names from wars long past. A sudden scream jolted me upright. It was Sergeant Santos. I crept to my door and peeked out. She was standing in the hallway, pointing at something none of us could see. "They're here," she cried. "All the men from my unit who died. Johnson with his head blown off. Martinez with his guts hanging out. They're walking around touching everyone." Dr. Torres tried to calm her, but then Captain Harrison started seeing them too. He backed against the wall, saluting and apologizing to people who weren't there. Dad tried to take control, barking orders like he was back in the Marines. But his voice cracked and his hand shook. For the first time in my life, I saw my father afraid. And then we all heard it. A long, low howl that was not the wind, not a wolf, not anything natural. It echoed across the frozen landscape, making the windows rattle in their frames. Corporal Kim's head snapped up, his eyes wide and hungry. "It's calling us," he whispered, his voice different, raspier. "The War Eater is calling us home." The veterans looked at each other with a strange understanding. Whatever was happening, they were all feeling it together. That's when Dad pulled out his hunting rifle. "Everyone stay inside," he ordered. "Tyler, get the shotgun from my room." "Rob, what are you doing?" Mom asked, grabbing his arm. "Something's out there," Dad said. "I'm going to check the perimeter." "I'll come with you," Dr. Torres offered. But Dad shook his head. "You stay with the others. I'll be back in 10 minutes. But he wasn't. We waited 15 minutes, then 30. The howling had stopped, and the night was deadly quiet. "I'm going to look for him," Tyler said, picking up the shotgun. Mom tried to stop him, but he was already putting on his coat. I wanted to tell him to stay, that whatever was out there had already gotten Dad, but I couldn't make my mouth work. Tyler had been gone for maybe 5 minutes when we heard the shotgun blast. Once, twice, then silence. Mom grabbed her medical kit and ran for the door, but Sergeant Santos blocked her way. "Don't go out there," she said, her voice low and strange. "It wants us to separate." "My husband and son are out there," Mom shouted, trying to push past. That's when the door burst open. Dad stumbled in, covered in snow and blood. Behind him, Tyler was dragging something. A body. It was Dr. Torres, his eyes wide open and frozen in terror, just like Elder Joseph. "What happened?" Mom gasped, helping Dad to a chair. "We saw it," Dad said, his voice hollow. The Wendigo, the War Eater. Captain Harrison moved closer, suddenly alert. You saw it. What did it look like? Dad's hands shook as he described it. 15 feet tall, skin like blue ice, so thin you could see every bone. And its eyes. He shuddered. Its eyes were like frozen stars. It was feeding on Dr. Torres, Tyler added, his voice strange and distant. Not his body, something else, like it was pulling something out of him through his mouth. I felt sick. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen in real life. But the look in Dad's eyes told me it was all too real. Captain Harrison walked to the window and looked out into the darkness. It knows we're all here now, he said quietly. All of us who've seen war. All of us who've taken lives. He turned to look at the group, his eyes strange and bright. And it's hungry. The storm picked up again, and the wind screamed through the trees. But underneath it was another sound, something moving around our cabin, its claws scraping against the wooden walls, looking for a way in. We were trapped in screaming pines with a monster that fed on war trauma, and it wasn't going to leave until it had consumed us all. We pushed furniture against the doors and windows that night. Nobody slept. We all just sat in the main room, listening to the thing circle our cabin, scratching at the walls. Mum tried to clean Dad's wounds, but they weren't normal cuts. They were like deep freezer burns, black and blue and dead-looking. Dad's eyes kept darting around the room like he was seeing things we couldn't see. They're all here, he whispered. All the men I killed in the war. They're watching me. Corporal Kim was getting worse too. His skin had turned a pale blue color, and his fingers had grown so long they looked like twigs. He kept licking his lips and staring at the rest of us, with hungry eyes. As the night wore on, Captain Harrison got quieter and quieter. He sat by the fireplace, nodding occasionally like he was listening to someone talk. When Sergeant Santos asked him what he was hearing, he just smiled and said, "Orders? I'm finally getting the right orders." Around dawn, the scratching stopped. The sudden silence was almost worse than the noise had been. "Maybe it's gone," Tyler said hopefully, peering through a crack in the window boards. That's when Corporal Kim started laughing, a horrible dry sound like branches breaking. "It doesn't leave," he said, his voice barely human anymore. "It just changes tactics." He lunged at Tyler suddenly, his stretched-out fingers reaching for my brother's throat. Tyler stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. Dad and Captain Harrison grabbed Kim, wrestling him to the floor. "We need to tie him up," Dad shouted. Mom found some rope and they secured Kim to a chair. He didn't fight them. He just kept laughing that awful laugh. "You can't stop it," he said, grinning with teeth that had definitely grown longer overnight. "The War Eater is already inside all of you who've killed." Dr. Torres's body was still laid out in the corner of the room. We'd covered him with the blanket, but now I noticed something horrible. His chest was moving, not like he was breathing, but like something under the blanket was shifting around. "Mom," I whispered, pointing. She saw it too and slowly approached, reaching for the edge of the blanket. When she pulled it back, we all gasped. Dr. Torres's body was being eaten from the inside out, not by animals or bugs, but by ice. Beautiful, intricate patterns of frost that were spreading through his veins, turning him into a frozen sculpture from the inside. "We need to burn the body," Captain Harrison said suddenly. Fire keeps it away." Dad nodded in agreement. "We'll use the shed. It's far enough from the cabin that we won't risk burning ourselves in." Captain Harrison volunteered to help Dad take the body outside. Mom didn't want them to go, but Captain Harrison had a strange calmness that convinced her. "The storm has stopped for now," he said. "We'll be quick." They wrapped Dr. Torres in the blanket and carried him out. Sergeant Santos, Tyler, Mom, and I watched from the window as they trudged through the deep snow toward the tool shed. They were halfway there when Captain Harrison suddenly dropped his end of the body. Dad turned in confusion, and that's when Captain Harrison hit him with a shovel that had been leaning against the side of the cabin. "Dad!" I screamed, but the thick windows muffled my voice. We watched in horror as Captain Harrison dragged both Dad and Dr. Torres's body into the shed. A moment later, smoke began to rise from the small building. "He's burning them both," Sergeant Santos whispered. Tyler grabbed the shotgun and headed for the door, but Sergeant Santos stopped him. "Wait," she said, her voice strange. "Look." Captain Harrison was walking back toward the cabin, but he looked different, taller somehow. His movements were jerky and wrong, like a puppet on strings. And behind him, rising up from the burning shed, was a massive shadow, the Wendigo, its skeletal form outlined against the flames. "It's in him now," Sergeant Santos said. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "The Wendigo has taken him." "What do we do?" Mom asked, her face pale. "We run," Sergeant Santos said. "We run, or we die." Tyler looked at the shotgun in his hands. "We fight," he said. But Sergeant Santos shook her head. "You can't fight it with guns. It's not really here. Not in the way we are. It feeds on trauma, on the memories of killing. And all of us who've been in war, we're full of that food." She looked at her hands and I gasped. Her fingertips were turning blue, stretching longer before our eyes. "It's starting in me too," she said quietly. "I can feel it, the hunger." "Then what do we do?" I asked, my voice small and scared. "You and your mother need to run," she told me. "The Wendigo wants warriors, people who have killed. It might not chase you as hard." "We're not leaving without Dad and Tyler," Mom said firmly. "Dad's gone," Tyler said, his voice breaking. "I saw his face when Harrison hit him. And now Harrison's coming back, but it's not really him anymore." We heard heavy footsteps on the porch. A fist pounded on the door, too powerful, too loud to be human. "Go out the back," Sergeant Santos said, picking up a kitchen knife. "I'll hold it off." "Maria, you're infected too," Mom argued. Sergeant Santos nodded. "I know. That's why I need Tyler to promise me something." She looked at my brother with intense eyes. "If I try to hurt anyone, you have to kill me. Promise me, Tyler." Tyler swallowed hard but nodded. The pounding at the door grew louder. The wood was starting to crack. "Go now," Sergeant Santos urged. "I'll buy you time." Mom grabbed my hand and we headed for the back door, Tyler following with the shotgun. As we slipped out, I heard the front door crash open and Captain Harrison's voice, except it wasn't his voice anymore. It was deeper, hollow, like wind howling through a cave. "Where are the warriors?" it asked. "I smell their deaths on them." We ran through the snow toward the trees. Behind us came a scream. Sergeant Santos. It was a sound of pain, but also hunger. "Don't look back," Mom ordered, pulling me along. But Tyler did look back, and what he saw made him raise the shotgun. Sergeant Santos was running after us, but she didn't look human anymore. Her arms had grown too long, her face stretched into something horrible and hungry. Behind her, in the doorway of the cabin, stood Captain Harrison, or what used to be Captain Harrison. His body had grown, stretching his skin tight over elongated bones, his eyes glowing blue in the dim morning light. Tyler fired the shotgun. The blast hit Sergeant Santos in the chest, throwing her backward into the snow. She lay there twitching, her two long fingers digging into the frozen ground. "I'm sorry," Tyler whispered. "We kept running, heading for the old forest road. If we could reach it, maybe we could follow it to the highway, find help. We'd made it about a mile when we heard them coming after us. Not just one set of footsteps, but many. The Wendigo had brought its collection of warrior spirits to hunt us down. We can't outrun them," Mom said, panting. She looked at Tyler and me with a determination I'd never seen before. "You two keep going. I'll lead them away." "No!" I cried, grabbing her arm. "Ashley, listen to me," Mom said, holding my face in her cold hands. "That thing wants warriors, people who've killed. I was an army medic. I had to make choices in the field, choices about who to save and who to let go. Her eyes filled with tears. I have the kind of guilt it feeds on, but you don't. You're innocent. I'll stay with you, Tyler said. Mom shook her head. You need to protect your sister. Get her to safety. She pressed something into Tyler's hand, the keys to the emergency snowmobile hidden in a storage cache a few miles down the road. If you can reach it, you can make it. To town! The sounds of pursuit grew louder. Mom hugged us both quickly, then pushed us away. Go now! Don't look back. No matter what you hear, don't look back. Tyler grabbed my hand, and we ran. Behind us, Mom started shouting, running in the opposite direction, drawing attention away from us. It worked. The sounds of pursuit veered away, following Mom deeper into the forest. Her shouts turned to screams, but we kept running like she told us to. We found the storage cache and the snowmobile. It started on the first try, a small miracle. Tyler drove while I clung to him, my face buried against his back, so I wouldn't have to see the forest around us. We'd been driving for maybe 15 minutes when Tyler suddenly stopped. "Do you hear that?" he asked. I listened. The forest was completely silent. No birds, no wind, nothing. Then we heard it, a single set of footsteps crunching through snow, coming closer, too fast to be human, too deliberate to be an animal. "It's coming," Tyler said, his voice shaking. "The Wendigo. It finished with Mom, and now it's coming for us." He tried to restart the snowmobile, but the engine just sputtered and died. "It's out of gas," he said in disbelief. The footsteps were getting closer. Through the trees I could see a tall, thin shadow moving toward us, ice-blue skin gleaming in the winter light. "Run, Ashley," Tyler said, handing me the keys. "There's a ranger station about 2 miles that way. They have a radio." "I'm not leaving you," I insisted. "You have to. That thing, it wants warriors. And His voice broke. "I killed Sergeant Santos. I'm marked now." He picked up a broken branch, holding it like a weapon. "I'll hold it off. You run." Before I could argue, he shoved me away and turned to face the approaching monster. I stood frozen. For a moment, watching my brother prepare to face something no human could fight. "Run!" he screamed at me. And finally I did. I ran through the snow, stumbling and falling and getting back up again. Behind me I heard Tyler yelling, then a horrible screeching sound that wasn't human or animal. I ran until my lungs burned, and my legs felt like they were breaking. I ran until I couldn't hear anything from behind me anymore. The ranger station appeared ahead, a small wooden building with a radio antenna on top. I burst through the door, finding 2 startled rangers. Inside. "Please," I gasped. "My family, something's killing them." They tried to help. They called in a rescue team, but when the team reached our camp, they found nothing but empty buildings, no bodies, no signs of struggle. Even the tool shed that had burned was intact, as if the fire had never happened. They decided I was in shock, that my family had gotten lost in the blizzard. They searched for weeks but found nothing. No one believed my story about the Wendigo. They sent me to live with my aunt in Portland, and eventually I stopped telling people what really happened. But sometimes I still hear it at night, that howling in the wind that sounds like voices calling names. Warrior names, the names of those who have killed and carry that weight inside them. And I know the Wendigo is still out there, feeding on their guilt, their trauma, their memories of war. Elder Joseph was right. The Wendigo doesn't just eat bodies, it devours warrior spirits. And now, whenever I meet someone who's been to war, I see how the Wendigo's eyes follow them, how it waits for them in their nightmares. Because the curse didn't end when I escaped, it just found a new home, in me. My name is Gabriel Martinez. I'm an anthropologist who studies how ancient people buried their dead. This is the story of what happened to me, my wife Lou, and our team in the Nevada desert back in 1974. I wish I could say it was just a bad dream, but the truth is much worse. I was 29 years old and desperate to prove my theories about ancient death rituals. My wife Louise, everyone called her Lou, was 27 and took amazing photographs of archaeological sites. We had been married for 3 years, and she followed me everywhere my research took us. This time, it took us somewhere we should never have gone. It all started when Dr. Helena Cross, a famous archaeologist, invited us to join her expedition to a hidden canyon in the Nevada desert. She said they had found an untouched Paiute burial ground that could change everything we knew about Native American history. How could I say no? The team was small but skilled. Besides Helena, there was Marcus Webb, her ambitious graduate student, who seemed too interested in the valuable artifacts. Elena Santos was our bone expert, quiet but brilliant at reading the stories told by ancient remains. Tommy Riverside was our Paiute guide, who clearly didn't want to be there but had agreed to help us anyway. "My people don't go to Devil's Backbone," Tommy told us on the drive out. "The elders say the bone walkers guard that place. They take from those who take from the dead." I smiled politely, but didn't really listen. Scientists like me often heard such warnings, and while I respected native traditions, I was too excited about the research possibilities to truly hear him. That was my first mistake. We arrived at Devil's Backbone in early August during the worst heat wave in decades. The thermometer on our truck read 118 degrees as we followed the narrow dirt road into the canyon. Massive red rock walls rose up on both sides, and strange wind-carved formations loomed overhead like watchful giants. "Doesn't look like much," Marcus said as we set up our tents near the dig site. "That's what makes it perfect," Helena replied. "Undisturbed for centuries." Lou wandered around taking photos of the canyon walls. "These petroglyphs are incredible," she called out. "Look at these figures. Their arms and legs are so long and twisted." Tommy walked over and stared at the rock art. His face went pale. "Those aren't people," he said quietly. "Those are the bone walkers. We shouldn't be here." Helena ignored him and showed us where to set up the excavation grid. By sunset, we had marked out the main burial area and established our base camp. The radio worked only sporadically, picking up static and strange whispers that might have been voices. That night, I woke up feeling like someone was watching me. Outside our tent, I heard a soft tapping sound, like dry sticks being knocked together. Probably just the wind, I told myself, and tried to go back to sleep. The next morning, we began the actual digging. Almost immediately, we found something unusual, human bones arranged in spiral patterns that made no sense archaeologically. They weren't natural burial positions, but looked deliberately placed. "This is extraordinary," Helena said, her eyes bright with excitement. "These patterns suggest ritual practices not documented in any Paiute research." "Or they were moved after burial," Helena suggested, examining a jawbone. "But there's no sign of animal disturbance." Tommy refused to touch any of the bones. He kept looking over his shoulder and muttering prayers in his native language. On the third day, an old woman arrived at our camp. Tommy ran to meet her. "This is my grandmother, Mary Riverside," he told us, "elder of our tribe." Mary was small but had eyes that seemed to look right through you. She walked slowly around our dig site, touching nothing but seeing everything. "You must leave this place," she finally said. "You have woken the bone painters. Already they are stirring below." Helena tried to politely dismiss her concerns, explaining the scientific importance of our work. "Science won't save you when they come," Mary replied. "They remember the old ways. They will paint with your bones as they did with those who came before." That afternoon, strange things began to happen. Our compasses started pointing toward the burial site instead of north. Equipment failed for no reason. Lou's camera captured strange shadows that shouldn't have been there. Long, stretched figures standing behind team members in photos where nothing had been visible to the naked eye. Sheriff Jack Morrison showed up that evening, his police truck, kicking up dust as it rumbled into camp. He wasn't there about us. He was investigating something else. Had some strange animal killings nearby, he explained, showing us photos that made my stomach turn. Cattle with bones removed, but skin intact, bones arranged in patterns around the bodies. Tommy and his grandmother exchanged glances. Started about the same time you folks began digging, the sheriff said. Thought you might have seen something. We hadn't, but I felt a chill despite the desert heat. The real breakthrough, and the beginning of our nightmare, came the next morning. Helena uncovered a perfectly preserved burial of what appeared to be a Paiute shaman. The body was positioned upright in the grave, arms reaching toward the sky, surrounded by bone tools and strange painted symbols. Helena was ecstatic. "This will make my career," she whispered, touching the ancient bones with bare hands despite proper protocol. That's when she froze, her eyes rolling back. She began speaking in a language none of us recognized, except Tommy and Mary, who backed away in fear. "She speaks the dead tongue," Mary said. "The bone painters are listening. Through her now." Helena snapped out of it moments later with no memory of what had happened. She laughed off our concerns and ordered us back to work. That night our radio died completely. The supply truck that was supposed to arrive broke down miles away. Cell phones didn't work in the canyon. We were cut off, and somewhere in the darkness beyond our camp, I heard that tapping sound again, like dry bones knocking together, getting closer. I woke up to screaming. It was still dark outside, maybe 3 or 4 in the morning. Lou grabbed my arm tight as we ran from our tent toward the sound. Everyone else was running too, flashlight beams dancing across the canyon walls. The screams came from the burial site. When we got there, I couldn't believe what I saw. Tommy was kneeling over his grandmother's body. Mary lay on her back, right next to the shaman's grave we'd found yesterday. Her eyes were open, but empty. She wasn't breathing. "She came to protect us," Tommy said, tears running down his face, "to close what we opened." The strange part, the part that made my skin crawl, was how her body looked. Mary's arms and legs were twisted in the same spiral pattern as the bones we'd found in the dig. No person could bend that way on their own. Sheriff Morrison arrived at camp later that morning. He wrote down what everyone saw, but I could tell he didn't know what to make of it. "Could be a heart attack," he said. "The old lady was out here, in this heat, trying to do some kind of ritual, but I don't like how she was found." While the sheriff was talking to Tommy, Helena pulled me aside. "We need to keep working," she whispered. "This is too important to stop now." I wasn't sure anymore. Something felt very wrong about this place, but before I could argue, Marcus called out from the dig site. Guys, you need to see this." We all walked over. Marcus was pointing at the shaman burial we'd uncovered yesterday. The skeleton wasn't in the same position anymore. The arms were now pointing down instead of up, and the skull was turned to face our camp. "That's impossible," Helena said, kneeling down for a closer look. "No one has touched this since yesterday." "The ground shifted," Helena said quickly. "It happens all the time in excavations." But I'd been on enough digs to know better. Nothing else in the pit had moved. Just the skeleton. That afternoon, Elena came to me looking worried. "I've been studying the bones we found," she said. "The marks on them. They're not normal decay or animal damage. They look like someone used tools to reshape them, while the people were still alive." I felt sick. "That can't be right. I know what I'm seeing, Gabriel," she insisted, "and there's something else. The new marks on Mary's bones match these ancient ones perfectly." That night, the heat wouldn't break. It stayed over 100 degrees, even after dark, and nobody could sleep. I walked around camp and found Marcus sitting alone by a small fire, staring into the flames. He was rubbing something on his face. "What are you doing?" I asked. He turned to me and I stepped back in shock. He had drawn white lines across his face using some kind of powder, Learning the old ways, he said, but his voice sounded different, deeper. They're teaching me things, Gabriel. Beautiful things about bones and how they can be used. Who's teaching you? He just smiled and turned back to the fire. I hurried back to tell Lou what I'd seen, but on the way, I heard something that made me freeze. That tapping sound again, like bones clicking together. It was coming from the burial site. I shined my flashlight that way and saw movement just for a second before it disappeared. The next morning, Sheriff Morrison's truck was still parked at our camp, but he was nowhere to be found. Tommy and I searched for hours before finding him near the canyon wall. He was alive but barely conscious, mumbling about seeing people with long arms walking through solid rock. His skin was burned badly from the sun, and he seemed confused. Need to get him to a hospital, I said to Tommy. No way out now, Tommy replied, looking up at the sky. Look. Dark. Clouds were gathering above the canyon. Flash flood warnings had been posted for days, but now it looked like the storm was finally coming. The only road would be washed out soon. Back at camp, things got worse. Dr. Richard Cross, Helena's ex-husband, who had been studying rocks nearby, was found dead in a small side canyon. His body was twisted into an unnatural shape, with parts of his skeleton, his ribs and one arm bone, removed entirely. His geological equipment was arranged in a circle around him. "This is murder," Lou whispered, her face pale as she photographed the scene. "We need to leave. Now." Helena didn't even seem upset about her ex-husband's death. She just stared at the body with a strange smile. "The patterns are beautiful, aren't they?" she said. "Just like in the ancient texts." That's when I realized Helena wasn't herself anymore. None of us were safe, as if nature itself had turned against us. Snakes and scorpions began appearing in our tents. Coyotes circled the camp, watching us with two smart eyes. The animals moved, together, like they were being controlled. That night, as the first lightning flashed across the sky, I saw Helena walking toward the burial site. She was naked, except for white markings painted all over her body, carrying a bone knife we'd found at the dig. I followed her at a distance and watched as she knelt by the shaman's grave. "We are ready," she said to the empty air. "The vessels are prepared." A sudden gust of hot wind knocked me down. When I looked up, Helena was staring right at me, but her eyes were completely black. "Gabriel," she said, but the voice wasn't hers. It was ancient and dry, like wind through dead branches. "Your bones will make a fine painting." I ran back to camp as fast as I could. I had to get Lou and the others. We had to leave this place before it was too late. Tommy was waiting when I got there, his face grim. "I'm going to try something," he said. "An old ritual my grandmother taught me. It might buy you time to escape." "Come with us," I begged. He shook his head. "Someone has to face them. The bone walkers won't stop otherwise." As rain began to fall for the first time in months, Tommy walked toward the burial site alone, singing in his native language. I grabbed Lou and started throwing our essential gear into backpacks. "What about the others?" she asked. "Elena is getting Sheriff Morrison ready to move," I said. "But I can't find Marcus." Lou pointed to the canyon wall. There was a figure standing there, too tall and thin to be human, arms hanging down past its knees. It was watching us. "That's not Marcus anymore," she whispered. Suddenly, the figure was gone, and from the direction of the burial site, we heard Tommy begin to scream. Tommy's screams stopped suddenly. The silence that followed was worse than the screaming. "We have to go now," I told Lou, grabbing her hand. The rain was coming down, harder, making rivers of mud that flowed down the canyon walls. We found Eleanor trying to help Sheriff Morrison. The sheriff was burning with fever, his eyes wide and scared. "They're inside my head," he kept saying. "I can feel them looking through my memories." Eleanor looked at me. "He needs a doctor. We all need to leave." The road will be flooded soon, I said. We need to try for higher ground and hope someone comes looking for us. We gathered what supplies we could carry: water, flashlights, a first aid kit. The rain was cold against my skin, such a strange feeling after days of burning heat. As we headed toward the canyon entrance, I saw something that made my blood freeze. 3 tall figures stood blocking our path. They looked almost human, but wrong somehow. Their arms and legs too long, their fingers ending in sharp points. Their faces were painted with white patterns that seemed to glow in the darkness. One of them was Tommy, or what used to be Tommy. His body was stretched and twisted, his eyes empty holes. Next to him stood Helena, changed in the same terrible way. The third figure I didn't recognize at first, until it smiled. Marcus. "Don't run, Gabriel," Helena's voice called out, but her mouth didn't move right with the words. "The bone painters need your memories, your knowledge." We turned and ran the other way, splashing through mud and rain. The only other way out was a narrow side canyon that Tommy had shown us on the first day. "They're herding us," Helena gasped as we ran. She was right. Every time we tried to change direction, one of those things would appear, forcing us back toward the burial site. Lou stumbled and fell, her camera splashing into a puddle. I helped her up and we kept moving. The sheriff was slowing us down, leaning heavily on Helena. "Leave me," he said between ragged breaths. "I'll hold them off." "No one gets left behind," I insisted, though part of me wondered if we were all already dead. We found shelter in a small cave high up on the canyon wall. The rain continued to pour, turning the canyon floor into a rushing river. We were trapped, but at least those things couldn't reach us for now. Sheriff Morrison's condition got worse through the night. He screamed about fingers reaching into his skin, about bones moving under his flesh. Eleanor tried to help him, but there was nothing she could do. "I've seen something like this before," she whispered to me, "in my forensic work. People whose bones were removed while they were still alive. But that was done with surgery, by serial killers. This is..." She couldn't finish the thought. In the pale light of dawn, the sheriff was gone. Not dead, gone. His sleeping bag was empty, with no sign of how he could have left the cave without us noticing. Lou pointed wordlessly to the canyon floor below. There, arranged in a perfect circle, were what looked like white sticks. But they weren't sticks. They were Sheriff Morrison's bones, every single one, arranged in a spiral pattern. In the center was his skull. "How is that possible?" Lou whispered, her hands shaking as she raised her camera. "No one could strip a body like that. Not so cleanly, not so fast." I had no answer. Helena studied the bone arrangement through binoculars. It's the same pattern as in the burial site, exactly the same, down to the smallest detail. As we watched in horror, the bones began to move. They shifted and clicked together, forming a new shape. Something like a human, but horribly wrong. The bone thing stood up. It had no skin, no muscle, just bones that somehow moved together. It turned its skull toward our cave and seemed to look right at us. Then Sheriff Morrison's voice called out from the thing, "Help me, I'm still here." "I can feel everything," Helena threw up. Lou turned away, sobbing. I just stared, unable to believe what I was seeing. "We need to document this," I said finally, my anthropologist's mind trying to make sense of the impossible. "People need to know what happened here." "No one will believe us," Lou said, but she started taking pictures anyway. Her hands were steady now, her photographer's instincts taking over. We spent the day watching the canyon, planning our escape. The rain had stopped, but the canyon floor was still flooded. The bone things, including the one made from Sheriff Morrison, patrolled below, waiting for us. "I've been thinking," Helena said quietly. "What if the ancient Paiute shamans found a way to live after death? What if they learned to exist as pure consciousness, using bones as their bodies?" "That's not possible," I said. "Look down there and tell me what's possible," she replied. As the sun began to set, we saw Helena and Marcus climbing toward our cave. They moved wrong, their joints bending in impossible ways, fingers digging into solid rock like it was soft clay. "We need to move," I said. "Now." We grabbed our packs and climbed higher, following a narrow ledge that circled the canyon wall. The going was slow and dangerous. One wrong step meant falling to our deaths, or worse, falling to them. Lou was ahead of me, Elena behind. I heard Elena scream and turned to see Marcus pulling her back by the ankle, his two long fingers wrapped around her leg. I lunged for her hand, but I was too late. Marcus dragged her down the cliff face, her screams echoing off the canyon walls. Then silence. "We can't help her," I told Lou, who was crying again. "We have to keep moving." We reached a high point, where we could see much of the canyon. What we saw made no sense. The burial site was glowing with a pale blue light. Dozens of bone figures now moved around it, some animal-shaped, some human. They were building something, a structure made entirely of bones. "My God," Lou whispered, "there are more of them than I thought." I spotted Elena at the edge of the burial site. She was alive but changed. Her movements were jerky, puppet-like. She was examining her own arm with clinical detachment as bones slowly pushed through her skin. "I understand now." Her voice carried up to us, unnaturally loud. "The bone extraction process is fascinating. I can feel each connection as it's severed." She turned her face up toward us, her eyes now black holes in her head. "Come down, Gabriel. Come see what I've learned." That's when I knew for certain. Elena was gone. Whatever was wearing her body now wasn't her anymore. Lou and I kept moving along the canyon rim, hoping to find a way down the other side. Night fell, making it harder to see the path. We had to use our flashlights, which meant those things could see us too. "Look," Lou said suddenly, pointing into the distance. "Lights!" About a mile away, I could see what looked like headlights moving along the desert road. Rescue, maybe? Hope surged through me. "We need to get their attention," I said. Lou took out her camera flash and started signaling, 3 quick flashes at a time. The distant lights seemed to change direction, heading toward the canyon. "It worked," I said. "They see us." We hurried along the rim, trying to reach a place where we could climb down to meet our rescuers. The lights grew closer, and I could make out what looked like 2 trucks approaching the canyon entrance. Then the lights split apart, moving in impossible ways. No truck could drive like that. The lights rose into the air, separated, came back together. "Those aren't trucks," Lou said, her voice hollow. "Those are them. They're making us see what we want to see." As if hearing her words, the lights suddenly blinked out. In their place stood more of the bone figures, waiting at the canyon entrance. We were surrounded. "We're trapped," Lou whispered, her hand gripping mine so tight it hurt. We huddled against the canyon wall, watching as more bone figures gathered below. I counted at least 20 now, some made from animals, some from humans. They moved around the glowing burial site like they were dancing. "We can't stay here," I said. "They'll find a way up." "Where can we go?" Lou asked. The fear in her eyes broke my heart. I looked around desperately. "There's a small cave opening further along this ledge. Maybe it goes deeper into the mountain." We crept forward, keeping our flashlights pointed at our feet. One wrong step and we'd fall. The ledge was only about a foot wide in some places. The cave was really just a crack in the rock, but it was big enough for us to squeeze through. Inside, it opened up a little, just enough to stand. "Shine your light around," I said. "See if this leads anywhere." Lou's flashlight beam showed only solid rock walls, except for one small tunnel leading down. "I don't like this," she said, "but we don't have a choice, do we?" We followed the tunnel as it twisted deeper into the mountain. The air grew colder and damper. Water dripped somewhere ahead. "Gabriel," Lou said suddenly, stopping. Listen. I held my breath. From somewhere deep in the tunnel came that familiar sound. Click, click, click. Like dry bones tapping together. "They're in here too," I whispered. We turned to go back, but behind us stood Helena. Her body was barely human anymore, her skin pulled tight over elongated limbs, her fingers now long bone spikes. Her face was painted with white ash, in the same patterns we'd seen on the ancient rock art. "No more running," she said in that dry, ancient voice. "Your bones are needed for the final pattern." I pushed Lou behind me. "What are you?" Helena's head tilted at an impossible angle. "We are the Guardians, the Bone Painters. We were shamans once before we found the deeper magic. What do you want?" "To complete what was started centuries ago, a gateway of bone to bring more of us through." She reached toward me with those terrible spike fingers. "Your bones will help build it." I grabbed a loose rock from the tunnel floor and threw it at her face. It hit with a crack, and she stumbled back. We ran past her, deeper into the tunnel. The passage sloped downward, taking us further into darkness. Our flashlight beams bounced wildly as we ran. The clicking sound grew louder, coming from all around us now. The tunnel suddenly opened into a large cave. Our flashlights couldn't reach the ceiling, but they showed us what filled the floor: bones. Thousands of bones from animals and humans, arranged in complex patterns that covered every inch of the ground. "It's a nest," Lou whispered. In the center of the cave stood a structure made entirely of human bones, a tower that reached up into the darkness. At its base I saw Eleanor. She was still changing, her skin splitting as her bones pushed out in new directions. She looked at us with black, empty eyes. "The process is remarkable," she said in a calm voice that chilled me. "I'm documenting everything, from inside my own transformation." Marcus stepped out from behind the bone tower. He was fully changed now, his body twisted into something inhuman. Only his voice was still recognizable. "You shouldn't have come this way, Gabriel," he said. "This is where it all started, where the first bone painters were born." More figures emerged from the shadows surrounding us. Some I recognized: Helena, Tommy, Sheriff Morrison's animated skeleton. Others were strangers, maybe hikers or campers, who had disappeared over the years. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, backing up with Lou until we hit the cave wall. "To feed," said Helena. "Your memories, your knowledge. We take it all when we take your bones." "And to build," added Marcus, pointing to the tower. "The gateway grows. Soon it will reach the surface, and more will come through from the other side." I felt something change in Lou. Her body tensed and she stepped forward. "No," she said firmly. "You won't take us. You won't take our bones." She raised her camera and fired the flash directly into Helena's face. The bright light filled the cave, and the bone creatures shrieked, covering their eyes. "The light hurts them," Lou shouted, firing the flash again and again. We pushed past the blinded creatures and ran for a different tunnel on the far side of the cave. Behind us, I heard them recovering, starting to follow. This new tunnel went up, which gave me hope. Maybe it led to the surface. We ran until our lungs burned, the sounds of pursuit growing louder behind us. The tunnel ended at a small opening. Fresh air poured in. We'd found a way out, but as we reached it, I realized it was too small for an adult to fit through. "We're so close," Lou sobbed, her fingers clawing at the opening, trying to make it bigger. I heard the bone creatures getting closer. We had minutes, maybe seconds. "Lou," I said, taking her face in my hands. "I love you. I'm sorry I brought you here." She kissed me. "We're going to make it. We have to." I looked around desperately for anything we could use. My flashlight beam caught something. A small pile of old dynamite sticks and mining equipment. This must have been part of an old mining operation. "Lou, look," I said. "If we can set this off, maybe we can widen the opening." "Or bring the whole tunnel down on top of us," she said. The bone creatures were almost here. I could hear them clicking and scraping against the tunnel walls. "Better than what they'll do to us," I said. We quickly set up the dynamite near the small opening, using the old mining equipment to secure it. The dynamite was old and might not even work, but it was our only chance. "Get as far back as you can," I told Lou as I lit the fuse with my cigarette. "Lighter." We pressed ourselves against the far wall of the tunnel end, covering our ears. The fuse sparked and burned, moving quickly toward the dynamite. Helena and Marcus appeared at the tunnel entrance, their bone-spike fingers reaching for us. "You cannot escape," Helena said. "Your bones are already ours." The dynamite exploded with a deafening roar. The whole mountain seemed to shake. Rocks fell from the ceiling and dust filled the air. For a moment, I thought we'd killed ourselves. When the dust cleared, I saw that the explosion had worked. The small opening was now much larger, big enough to climb through. Daylight streamed in. "It worked!" I shouted. "Lou, we can—" I turned and felt my heart stop. Lou was pinned beneath a large rock that had fallen from the ceiling. Blood pooled around her. "Go," she whispered, her face pale. "They're coming." I could hear the bone creatures recovering from the blast, starting to move toward us again. "I won't leave you," I said, trying to move the rock. It was too heavy. "You have to," she said. "Someone has to tell what happened here. Show them the photos." She pressed her camera into my hands. "Now go." I kissed her one last time, then climbed through the opening. The sun was rising, painting the desert gold. I ran as fast as I could, not looking back even when I heard Lou's scream cut suddenly short. I ran until I collapsed from exhaustion. A trucker found me on the highway hours later, raving about bone monsters and ancient shamans. They took me to a hospital where doctors diagnosed me with severe dehydration and heat stroke. No one believed my story. When they finally sent a search party to Devil's Backbone, they found nothing, no bodies, no camp, no evidence anyone had ever been there. The flash flood had washed everything away, they said, or I had imagined it all. But I know what happened. I have Lou's camera with the photos that prove it, photos of bone arrangements that shouldn't be possible, photos of Helena with her skin stretched over elongated limbs, photos of Sheriff Morrison's bones dancing without flesh. I keep the camera, locked away now. I haven't developed the film. I'm afraid of what the images might call to our world. Sometimes at night, I feel my bones shifting under my skin. Just a little, just enough to remind me that they're patient. The bone painters have all the time in the world to wait. And sometimes I hear that sound, click, 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 like dry bones tapping together, coming from just outside my window. My name is Catherine Ashford, but everyone just calls me Cat. I never thought I'd end up living in the middle of nowhere, but here we are, me, my husband Victor, and our 2 children, Michael and Rebecca. Victor wasn't always like this. Before the accident, he was full of life and laughter. He'd come home from the mines with coal dust still on his face, sweep our kids up in his arms and tell the wildest stories. But that was before the cave-in that killed his whole crew. Victor was the only one who made it out alive. The doctors called it survivor's guilt. I called it a living nightmare. For months after, he couldn't sleep in our bedroom, said the walls were closing in. He'd wake up screaming, thinking he was still trapped under all that rock with his dead friends. When Victor's grandfather died and left us that old cabin in Cedar Hollow, it seemed like a gift from heaven. 160 acres of forest, mountains and fresh air. A place to heal. "This is it, Cat," Victor said when we first drove up the dirt road last month. "No more nightmares, no more memories. The cabin itself is nothing special. Logs stacked together over 100 years ago with a stone fireplace and creaky floors. But it's ours. Michael, who's 12, claimed the loft bedroom right away. 9-year-old Rebecca took the small room that looks out toward the forest. There's no electricity, just oil lamps and candles, but we're making do. The nearest town is 40 miles away, and our closest neighbor, though I've never met them, is supposed to be about 15 miles down. The mountain. It's just us, the trees, and the wind. I set up a small garden behind the cabin, and Victor seems better out here. During the day, he chops wood or repairs things around the property. At night, he actually sleeps. The kids are adjusting too. Michael spends hours exploring the woods, collecting bugs and rocks. Rebecca has made a new friend, an imaginary one she calls Tall Mary, who supposedly lives in the trees. It's October now, and the forest around us has turned into a sea of red and gold. The maple trees look like they're on fire when the sun hits them just right. It's beautiful, but there's something about this place that makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up sometimes. Yesterday, while hanging laundry, I noticed how quiet it is. Not peaceful quiet, but empty quiet. No birds singing, no squirrels chattering, just the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. We had our first visitor yesterday, a mountain man named Jerry Stone, who brings supplies up to folks who live off the grid. He's a rough-looking older man with a beard down to his chest, but he has kind eyes. His wife, Martha, makes herbal remedies, and he brought some tea for Victor's nerves. While the kids were out of earshot, Jerry mentioned something odd. "You folks settling in all right?" he asked, looking around nervously. "Yes, we're doing fine," I said. "That's good. Just keep an eye on the little ones when they're outside, especially when the sun starts going down." When I asked him what he meant, he just shook his head. "This hollow has stories, Mrs. Ashford. Old stories. Some people who moved up here, well, they don't always stay long." He wouldn't say more, just tipped his hat and drove away in his old pickup truck. That night, Victor's doctor from back home, Dr. Price, came to check on him. His last house call before we're on our own out here. He seemed pleased with Victor's progress and planned to head back to town in the morning. As I tucked Rebecca into bed, she told me, "Tall Mary left me a present today." "Oh? What kind of present?" I asked, thinking it was just her imagination. She reached under her pillow and pulled out a strange little thing. Twigs twisted together in a shape I couldn't quite make out. "She says it's to keep me safe," Rebecca whispered. "Safe from the people under the ground." I smiled and kissed her good night, but later, when I went to check on her, I noticed something on her window. Handprints, much larger than any of ours, pressed against the glass from the outside. And they weren't there in the morning. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling of those handprints from my mind. I kept it from Victor. He was finally doing better, and I didn't want to worry him over what might just be my tired brain playing tricks. Dr. Price left after breakfast, promising to check in when he could. As his car disappeared down our dirt road, I felt a strange weight settle over me. We were truly alone now. That afternoon, Michael came running into the kitchen, his face flushed with excitement. "Mom, I found something weird in the woods," he said, opening his hand to show me. My stomach turned. Sitting in his palm were 3 human teeth, yellowed with age. "Where did you get those?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "From a tree. They were stuck in the bark, like someone pushed them in." I took the teeth and wrapped them in a napkin. "Michael, I don't want you going too far into the woods alone anymore, okay?" He rolled his eyes. "Mom, I'm 12. I know, but humor me." Later that day, our dog Rex refused to follow Rebecca into a clearing near the old family cemetery, on our property. He just sat at the edge, whining, his tail between his legs. When Jerry Stone came by with more supplies a few days later, I showed him the teeth Michael had found. Jerry's face went pale. "Mrs. Ashford, there's something you should know about this property." We sat on the porch steps while the kids played in the yard. "This hollow has a history," he said quietly. "Your husband's grandfather knew it. That's why he never lived here himself. This land sits on old Cherokee grounds, sacred grounds. See, those mounds past the oak trees? Burial mounds." He told me about the families who had lived here before, 7 of them since the 1890s, all gone without a trace. "Just vanished?" I asked. Some say they just up and left, others say—" He trailed off, looking toward the trees. The Cherokee elder, Ezra Whitlock, calls them tree walkers, says they hunt when the leaves turn red. I laughed nervously. "You don't really believe that, do you?" Jerry didn't smile back. "My wife Martha makes protection charms. I'll bring you some next time." That night I tried to tune in the radio while Victor read to the kids. Nothing but static, no matter how I turned the dial. And when Victor checked his watch to see if it was bedtime, he frowned. "That's odd," he said. "My watch is running backward." The next morning I woke to find Rebecca sitting at the kitchen table drawing. "What are you making, sweetheart?" I asked. "It's Tall Mary's family," she said. The picture showed tall, thin figures standing among trees. Their arms were too long, their eyes just empty circles. "Tall Mary says they're coming to visit soon." That same day, Victor tried to hike to the stream where he'd been fishing, but came back confused and upset. "I couldn't find it," he said. "I know it was there yesterday, but the path, it's like it moved. I ended up back at the cabin 3 times. The weather turned cold that week. An early frost killed my garden, and the days seemed to get shorter. Faster than they should have. The beautiful red leaves became something menacing, a blood-colored canopy that blocked the light. We were eating dinner when someone knocked on our door. It was an old man with weathered copper skin and silver hair. He introduced himself as Ezra Whitlock. "You must leave this place," he said without preamble, "before the moon turns red." Victor bristled. "This is our home now." "No," Ezra said. "It has never been anyone's home. It has only ever been a hunting ground." He tried to tell us more, but Victor was angry. Thought the old man was trying to scare us off our land. He asked him to leave, and Ezra did, but not before pressing something into my hand, a small pouch that smelled of herbs. "Keep this with you," he whispered. "They smell fear." That night, a storm hit like nothing I'd ever seen. Thunder that shook the cabin, lightning that turned night into day. The rain came down in sheets, and we could hear trees cracking in the distance. When morning came, Victor went to check the road. "The bridge is gone," he said when he returned, "dripping wet. Washed clean away. We're stuck here until someone can fix it." I tried not to show my panic. We had food for maybe 2 weeks, and the radio was still nothing but static. That evening I couldn't find Rebecca at dinner time. We searched the house, calling her name, panic rising with each empty room. Victor grabbed a flashlight. "I'll check outside." We found her an hour later, standing perfectly still in front of one of the burial mounds. Her nightgown was soaked from the light rain, her feet bare and muddy. "Rebecca!" I ran to her, wrapping my arms around her cold little body. "What are you doing out here?" She looked up at me, her eyes strangely distant. "Tall Mary showed me. The sleeping people underground," she said. "She says they're going to wake up soon." As we carried her back to the cabin, I glanced over my shoulder. Just for a second I thought I saw something moving among the trees, something tall, with arms that hung down too far, and eyes that caught the flashlight beam and glowed amber in the dark. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling of those handprints from my mind. I kept it from Victor. He was finally doing better, and I didn't want to worry him over what might just be my tired brain playing tricks. Dr. Price left after breakfast, promising to check in when he could. As his car disappeared down our dirt road, I felt a strange weight settle over me. We were truly alone now. That afternoon, Michael came running into the kitchen, his face flushed with excitement. "Mom, I found something weird in the woods," he said, opening his hand to show me. My stomach turned, sitting in his palm were 3 human teeth, yellowed with age. "Where did you get those?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "From a tree. They were stuck in the bark like someone pushed them in." I took the teeth and wrapped them in a napkin. "Michael, I don't want you going too far into the woods alone anymore, okay?" He rolled his eyes. "Mom, I'm 12. "I know, but humor me." Later that day, our dog Rex refused to follow Rebecca into a clearing near the old family cemetery on our property. He just sat at the edge, whining, his tail between his legs. When Jerry Stone came by with more supplies a few days later, I showed him the teeth Michael had found. Jerry's face went pale. "Mrs. Ashford, there's something you should know about this property." We sat on the porch steps while the kids played in the yard. "This hollow has a history," he said quietly. "Your husband's grandfather knew it. That's why he never lived here himself. This land sits on old Cherokee grounds, sacred grounds. See, those mounds past the oak trees? Burial mounds." He told me about the families who had lived here before, 7 of them since the 1890s, all gone without a trace. "Just vanished?" I asked. "Some say they just up and left, others say—" He trailed off, looking toward the trees. The Cherokee elder, Ezra Whitlock, calls them tree walkers, says they hunt when the leaves turn red. I laughed nervously. "You don't really believe that, do you?" Jerry didn't smile back. "My wife Martha makes protection charms. I'll bring you some next time." That night, I tried to tune in the radio while Victor read to the kids. Nothing but static, no matter how I turned the dial. And when Victor checked his watch to see if it was bedtime, he frowned. "That's odd," he said. "My watch is running backward." The next morning, I woke to find Rebecca sitting at the kitchen table drawing. "What are you making, sweetheart?" I asked. "It's Tall Mary's family," she said. The picture showed tall, thin figures standing among trees. Their arms were too long, their eyes just empty circles. "Tall Mary says they're coming to visit soon." That same day, Victor tried to hike to the stream where he'd been fishing, but came back confused and upset. "I couldn't find it," he said. "I know it was there yesterday, but the path, it's like it moved. I ended up back at the cabin 3 times." The weather turned cold that week. An early frost killed my garden, and the days seemed to get shorter, faster than they should have. The beautiful red leaves became something menacing, a blood-colored canopy that blocked the light. We were eating dinner when someone knocked on our door. It was an old man with weathered copper skin and silver hair. He introduced himself as Ezra Whitlock. "You must leave this place," he said without preamble, "before the moon turns red." Victor bristled. "This is our home now." "No," Ezra said. "It has never been anyone's home. It has only ever been a hunting ground." He tried to tell us more, but Victor was angry, thought the old man was trying to scare us off our land. He asked him to leave, and Ezra did, but not, before pressing something into my hand, a small pouch that smelled of herbs. "Keep this with you," he whispered. "They smell fear." That night, a storm hit like nothing I'd ever seen. Thunder that shook the cabin, lightning that turned night into day. The rain came down in sheets, and we could hear trees cracking in the distance. When morning came, Victor went to check the road. "The bridge is gone," he said when he returned, "dripping wet. Washed clean away. We're stuck here until someone can fix it." I tried not to show my panic. We had food for maybe 2 weeks, and the radio was still nothing but static. That evening, I couldn't find Rebecca at dinner time. We searched the house, calling her name, panic rising with each empty room. Victor grabbed a flashlight. "I'll check outside." We found her an hour later, standing perfectly still in front of one of the burial mounds. Her nightgown was soaked from the light rain, her feet bare and muddy. "Rebecca!" I ran to her, wrapping my arms around her cold little body. "What are you doing out here?" She looked up at me, her eyes strangely distant. "Tall Mary showed me. The sleeping people underground," she said. "She says they're going to wake up soon." As we carried her back to the cabin, I glanced over my shoulder. Just for a second, I thought I saw something moving among the trees, something tall with arms that hung down too far, and eyes that caught the flashlight beam and glowed amber in the dark. We watched from the windows as Sheriff Wade got out of his patrol car. He looked nervous, one hand resting on his gun holster as he glanced around the property. "Hello?" he called out. "Dr. Price? Jerry Stone? Anyone home?" Victor cracked the door open. "Sheriff, get inside, quick!" Sheriff Wade hurried to our door, looking over his shoulder every few steps. Once inside, Victor pushed the cabinet back against the door. "What in God's name is going on here?" the sheriff asked. "I've got missing persons reports for Dr. Price and the Stones. Their vehicles are outside, but they're nowhere to be found." "They're dead," I said flatly. My voice sounded strange even to me, like I was talking about the weather instead of our friends. "There's something in these woods, Sheriff, something hunting us." He looked at me like I was crazy, then at Victor for confirmation. "It's true," Victor said. "We've seen it. It took Jerry right in front of us. It did something to Martha, too." The sheriff's radio crackled with static as he tried to call for backup. Nothing but noise. "Look," he said, "I don't know what's happening here, but we need to get you folks to safety. My car's outside. We can all fit." "It won't let us leave," Michael said from the doorway. All the adults turned to look at him. "It wants us to be afraid first. It feeds on it." The sheriff knelt down to Michael's level. "Son, who told you that?" "The voices in my dreams," Michael said. "They speak the old language now." The sheriff looked disturbed, but tried to hide it. "I'm going to check the perimeter, make sure it's safe for us to make a run to my car." Victor tried to stop him, but the sheriff insisted. We watched from the window as he circled the cabin, gun drawn. At first, everything seemed fine. Then the sheriff stopped suddenly, staring into the trees. He raised his gun, shouting, "Police! Don't move!" "Who's he talking to?" I whispered. Victor shook his head. "I don't see anyone." The sheriff fired 3 shots into the forest. Then he started backing up, firing again. "Stay back!" he yelled at nothing we could see. Something changed in the air. A smell like wet leaves and rot drifted through the open window. The sheriff's movements became slower, like he was moving through water. His face twisted in horror as he looked at something only he could see. "No, no," he moaned. "You're dead. You're all dead." He turned his gun on himself. I covered Rebecca's eyes just in time. Victor pulled Michael away from the window. After that, we stayed in the center of the cabin, away from all windows and doors. Our food was running low. The voices outside grew louder. Dr. Price, Jerry, Martha, now Sheriff Wade, too. "Ashford family," Sheriff Wade's voice called. "Come, out. It's safe now." But it wasn't the sheriff, not really. Night fell, and with it came the most terrifying sounds, scratching at the walls, heavy footsteps on the roof, low growls from right outside the windows. Victor kept his rifle ready, though we both knew bullets wouldn't stop whatever was out there. Around midnight, there was a knock at the door. A real knock, not scratching. "Hello?" An elderly voice called out. "Please, let me in." I peeked through. A crack in the curtains. It was Ezra Whitlock, the Cherokee elder. "It could be a trick," Victor warned. "The children," Ezra called. "I can help the children." I looked at Michael, who was rocking back and forth, mumbling words I didn't understand. At Rebecca, who was drawing pictures of tall, twisted figures with hollow eyes. Let him in, I decided. Ezra shuffled inside, carrying a small leather bag. He looked exhausted. "I have come to perform the protection ritual," he said. "It will not stop the Hollowback, but it will give you shelter for a short time." "Hollowback?" Victor asked. "The Tree Walker, the Old Darkness. It has many names." Ezra looked around our small cabin. "It has hunted in this hollow for over 100 years. It feeds on fear, grows stronger with each kill." He took items from his bag. Herbs, small bones, stones with strange markings. He placed them at each corner of the cabin, mumbling words under his breath. "The ritual will hold until dawn," he said when finished. "After that..." He didn't finish the sentence. The old man looked so tired. He sat heavily in a kitchen chair, his breathing labored. "You should rest," I told him. He shook his head. "No time for rest. The Hollowback is gathering its strength, all its victims over the years, the Echo people, we call them. They are its tools now. The voices outside, Victor said. The people who looked like our friends. Ezra nodded. They are not real. Just echoes the Hollowback uses to lure new victims. How do we kill it? Victor asked. You don't, Ezra said simply. It is bound to. This land, to the burial grounds. It has been here longer than any of us. As he spoke, the noises outside stopped. The sudden silence was somehow worse than the scratching and growling. It's working, Ezra whispered. The protection holds. But the old man's face had gone grey. He clutched at his chest, gasping for breath. Mr. Whitlock? I reached for him as he slid from the chair. The ritual takes life. Energy, he managed to say. Use the time wisely. Those were his last words. The protection ritual had cost him his life. We laid his body gently on the couch and covered it with a blanket. There was no time to mourn. We need to leave, I said, right now while the protection is holding. Victor nodded. Pack only what we need, 1 bag each. As we gathered our things, I noticed Rebecca talking to the corner of the room. Who are you talking to, sweetie? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Tall Mary, she said. She's inside now? A chill ran through me. I grabbed Rebecca's hand. Stay with me. Don't talk to Mary anymore. Outside, the night was eerily still. No wind, no animal sounds, just perfect silence. The moon hung above us, tinged with red. The red moon, Victor whispered, just like Ezra warned. We made it to the sheriff's car. The keys were still in the ignition. Victor got behind the wheel while I sat in the back with the children. The engine started on. The first try. Victor turned the car around and headed down the dirt road, away from the cabin. We had gone maybe half a mile when Rebecca said, We're going in circles. I looked out the window. Somehow, impossibly, we were passing the same trees we'd passed minutes before. Victor drove faster, but it made no difference. Every turn brought us back to where we'd started. After the third loop, we saw them, standing in a circle around the cabin. Echo people, Dr. Price, Jerry and Martha Stone, Sheriff Wade, Ezra Whitlock, and others I didn't recognize. Dozens of them, all with that same empty look, all calling our names. And among them, taller than the rest, stood the Hollowback. In the moonlight, I could see it clearly. The moss-covered fur, the elongated arms with claws like knives, the hollow eye sockets glowing amber. It raised one long arm and pointed at our car. The engine died. Inside, Victor said, his voice tight with fear. Back inside now. We ran for the cabin, the Echo people closing in behind us. We barely made it back inside the cabin. Victor slammed the door shut and pushed the cabinet in front of it again, but we knew it wouldn't hold for long. Ezra's body was still on the couch, but the protection charms in the corners had turned to ash. The Echo people surrounded our cabin, their voices a terrible chorus calling our names. The walls seemed paper-thin now, like they could tear through at any moment. What do we do? I asked Victor, trying to keep my voice steady for the kids. He looked lost, more scared than I'd ever seen him. I don't know, Kat. I don't know. Michael tugged at my sleeve. Mom, I know what it wants. His face was so serious, so adult-like. It broke my heart. What, honey? It wants us to be afraid. Really, really afraid. That's what makes it stronger. He was right. I could feel it now. The fear was like a physical thing in the air, thick and choking. And somehow I knew the creature was drinking it in, growing more powerful with every racing heartbeat, every terrified breath. Victor grabbed his rifle. I'm going to lead it away from you, give you a chance to escape. No! I grabbed his arm. It'll kill you. Better me than all of us. He kissed me hard, then kissed each of the children. I love you. Run when you hear me fire. Run and don't look back. Before I could stop him, he slipped out the back door. We heard 3 shots ring out, then Victor shouting, "Over here, come and get me!" I grabbed a bag with some food and water. "Kids, stay close to me." We crept out the back door. The Echo people had moved toward the sound of Victor's voice. Our path to the forest was clear. "This way," I whispered, holding their hands tightly. We made it to the tree line when I heard Victor scream, not in pain, but in terror. I looked back and saw him standing perfectly still like he was frozen. The hollowback circled him slowly, those long arms reaching toward him. "Mommy, look," Rebecca said. All around us, the forest paths were changing. Trees moved, shadows shifted, every direction looked the same. "Keep going," I said, pulling them forward. We walked for what felt like hours, but the cabin never got farther away. Somehow, we kept ending up in sight of it, like the forest itself was bending around us, keeping us trapped. The air grew thick and heavy. My movements became sluggish, like I was walking through honey. The children slowed too. "Mom," Michael said, his voice stretched and distorted, "it's doing the time thing." He was right. The creature was slowing time around us, making escape impossible. And then I smelled. That rotting leaf smell, but stronger now. It was all around us. The fear hit me like a physical blow, making my knees buckle. Suddenly I was back in the hospital where I used to work as a nurse, watching patients die one after another, unable to help them. The worst memories of my life played before my eyes. I forced myself back to reality. "It's not real," I gasped. "It's the hollowback. It makes you see things." Michael had fallen to his knees, his eyes wide with terror at something only he could see. Rebecca was crying, reaching out for something or someone. "Tall Mary," she sobbed. "Help us." And then I remembered Martha Stone's herbs. I still had the bag Jerry had brought us. Inside were small pouches of dried plants that smelled sharp and clean. I broke one open and waved it under Michael's nose. His eyes cleared instantly. "Mom." "It's poison," I said. "The fear smell. It's like poison, and this is the medicine." I did the same for Rebecca, and her crying stopped. I took a deep breath of the herbs myself, and the terrifying visions faded. For a moment I felt hope, but then I saw something that made my blood run cold. Michael was changing. His eyes had a strange amber glow, and he was speaking in that language I didn't understand. "Michael?" I touched his face. "Honey, what's wrong?" "I can make it stop, Mom," he said in his normal voice. Then he switched back to the strange language. Rebecca tugged at my sleeve. "Tall Mary says Michael is learning the old words. She says he can talk to the sleeping people." "No," I grabbed Michael's shoulders. "Michael, stay with me. Don't listen to the voices." But he pulled away. "It's okay, Mom. I understand now. If I go with it, it will let you and Rebecca and Dad go." "No." I tried to hold him, but my arms moved in slow motion. Time was stretching around us again. Michael walked toward the cabin, toward the hollowback. I tried to follow, but I couldn't move fast enough. "Rebecca, stay here," I called, but when I looked back, she was following her brother. "Rebecca, no!" She turned to me with a sad smile. "Tall Mary says this is how we save everyone. The hollowback just wants children to play with." I screamed and fought against the thick air, but I could barely move. I watched helplessly as my children walked hand in hand toward the creature that had been hunting us. The hollowback stood by the cabin, Victor still frozen in place before it. As my children approached, it turned those glowing amber eyes toward them. Then something impossible happened. The air shimmered, and suddenly we were all back inside the cabin, me, Victor, Michael, and Rebecca. But something was wrong. The scene kept repeating like a skipping record. We would sit down for dinner, hear a noise outside, get up to check. Then we were back at the table again. The same conversation, the same movements. "What's happening?" I asked during one loop. time trap, Victor said, his voice strained. We're stuck. The loop changed. Now we were finding Dr. Price's body, over and over. Then Jerry being taken, Martha dying, the sheriff shooting himself, Ezra collapsing. The worst moments repeated endlessly. And through it all, the Hollowback watched, those amber eyes glowing brighter with each cycle, feeding on our fear and despair. During one loop, Victor managed to whisper to me, "It's toying with us, Cat. This is how it feeds." I looked for the children, but they weren't caught in the same loop. I caught glimpses of them outside with the Echo people, Michael speaking. The strange language, Rebecca holding hands with a tall, shadowy figure. "They've joined it," Victor said, his voice breaking, "to save us." But we weren't saved. We were trapped in an endless nightmare, forced to relive the worst moments again and again. During one loop, I found Martha's herb pouch again. I showed it to Victor. "It blocks the fear," I said, "if it can't make us afraid." Victor understood immediately. We took all the herbs, made a tea with them, the strongest dose possible. As we drank it, the loops began to slow. The Hollowback appeared in the cabin, those long arms reaching for us. But it couldn't touch us, not anymore. "The children," I whispered to Victor. "They're gone, Cat," he said gently. "They're with it now, part of it." In that moment, I knew what we had to do. Without the fear to feed on, the Hollowback would need new victims. If we were gone, it might leave our children alone. Victor knew it too. He held my hand as we finished the tea, far more than was safe to drink. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." As the darkness closed in, I saw the Hollowback watching us, those amber eyes dimming slightly. It hadn't expected this. My last thought was of Michael and Rebecca. I hoped that somehow, someday, they would find peace. My name is Thaddeus Boudreau, but everyone just calls me Thad. I'm 36 years old, and I've spent my whole life fishing these Louisiana bayous. After Hurricane Carmen swept through and destroyed nearly everything I'd built, I thought things couldn't get worse. I was wrong, so very wrong. It's October 1979, and the air hangs heavy over the water. Me and my family, my wife Marie, our boy Jean-Baptiste, JB for short, and our little girl Celeste. We've been rebuilding our lives out here on this old fishing camp. It sits on tall stilts, rising from the dark waters like a wooden island. You can only reach it by boat, which is how we like it. Peaceful, or at least it was. Marie's been on edge lately. She comes from a family of healers, what folks around here call root doctors. She knows all the old stories about these waters, stories I used to laugh at. I don't laugh anymore. "Thad," she said to me just last week, "something ain't right in the bayou." She was hanging up her special charms around our porch, little bundles of herbs and bones tied with red string. Her Aunt Ava came to visit soon after. That old woman has always given me the creeps, but Marie respects her. Ava's 71 and can read signs that nobody else sees. "The White Death is coming across the water," she told us one night, her eyes cloudy but somehow seeing too much. I feel it in my bones. I didn't pay much mind then. I was focused on getting my fishing business back up. But then strange things started happening. First, it was my nets. Instead of fish, I started pulling up bones, human bones. Some had teeth marks from something big, too big to be any gator I've ever seen. JB, our boy, he's 15 and rebellious as they come. Instead of being scared, he got curious. Started digging through my daddy's old journals, reading about something called the Rougarou, some kind of wolf man that haunts these parts. "Dad, Grandpa saw it too," he said, eyes wide with excitement rather than fear. "It's real." Meanwhile, our little Celeste, she's only 12, started seeing things. Marie says she was born with the sight, like her grandmother. "Daddy," she said one morning, her voice small, "I saw people walking on the water last night, and there was a bone. Man, he was picking up skeletons." I told her it was just bad dreams, but Marie looked worried. That same week, a man from Tulane University showed up in a fancy boat. Dr. James Holloway, he called himself, said he was studying Cajun folklore, asked us all kinds of questions about ghosts and monsters. I thought he was wasting his time until Deputy Claude Arsenault brought his police boat by. "You folks be careful out here," the deputy told us. "Got 5 people gone missing in the last month, all from camps along these waterways." Old Bo Landry, who's been fishing these waters longer than I've been alive, pulled me aside after the deputy left. "I seen it, Thad," he whispered, his breath sour with tobacco. "The white beast. It was digging up bones from that old Civil War ground, standing on 2 legs like a man, but it weren't no man. Even Father Melanson from the parish church came out. He blessed our home, but I could tell something was bothering him. He kept looking out at the water like he expected to see something rise up. The church teaches us to believe in God's light," he said quietly, "but sometimes I wonder about the darkness." Then came the night that changed everything. We were all asleep when a sound woke me, like wind chimes, but deeper, hollow. I grabbed my shotgun and went to the porch. There, arranged neat as you please on our dock, was a human skull. Its empty eyes seemed to stare right at me, and I knew then that Eva was right. Something was in the bayou, something that collected bones, and it had found us. The morning after finding that skull, I told Marie to take the kids to her cousin's place in town. She refused. "This is our home, Thad," she said, her eyes hard like stones. "Whatever's out there, we face it together." We didn't tell the kids about the skull. I threw it back into the deep water, but I couldn't shake the feeling it would find its way back. A week passed, and Dr. Holloway came back to ask more questions. He was excited, talking fast about connecting historical accounts and documented sightings. He wanted to go deeper into the bayou, to a place locals call the Bone Yard, an old burial ground where slaves and native folks were laid to rest. I wouldn't go there, I warned him. But he just smiled. "Superstition is fascinating, Mr. Boudreau, but I deal in facts." 2 days later, Deputy Arsenault showed up at our dock. His face looked grey and tired. "Found Holloway's boat," he said. "Empty, just some claw marks on the side and—" He paused. "A pile of clothes, like someone just melted out of them." That night, JB shook me awake around midnight. Dad, look," he pointed out the window toward the water. I couldn't believe my eyes. There, moving between the cypress trees, were shapes, human shapes, but wrong somehow, too thin, too jerky in their movements. The moonlight shone right through them. "They're made of bones," JB whispered, "walking skeletons." I blinked hard, hoping they'd disappear. They didn't. The next day we heard Bo Landry was dead. Deputy Arsenault found him in his fishing shack. The way he described it made my skin crawl. "It's like something ate him, Thad, everything but his bones. And the bones were arranged, like he was praying, kneeling there." Marie's Aunt Eva moved in with us after that. She hung more charms, spread salt and red brick dust across our doorways, and burned strange-smelling herbs that made my eyes water. "It won't be enough," she told Marie when she thought I couldn't hear. "The Rougarou is too old, too hungry." JB started acting strange. He'd stay up all night, reading his grandfather's journals, drawing pictures of the Rougarou. Pictures that gave me nightmares. A tall, wolf-like creature with patches of white fur and a face like a skull. He'd write things in the margins like "Hunter" and "Chosen One." Little Celeste stopped playing. She'd sit by the window for hours, talking quietly to herself. Once, I caught her whispering to an empty chair. "Who are you talking to, baby?" I asked. "The Bone People," she said simply. "They're trying to warn us. They say he's collecting, getting ready." I didn't ask what the Rougarou was getting ready for. I didn't want to know. Father Melanson came again to bless the house. This time he brought holy water and crosses. When he sprinkled the water on our porch, it turned dark red before our eyes. The wooden cross in his hand suddenly burst into flames. The priest dropped it, his face white with shock. "God help us," he whispered. That night, we heard a howl. across the water. Not like any animal I'd ever heard. It started low like a wolf, but ended high like a human scream. The sound made my heart stop for a moment. Deputy Arsenault came by the next day, with maps and papers. "I've been connecting the dots," he said, spreading them on our table. "Every missing person lived on land that used to be burial grounds. And your place, Thad, it's sitting right on top of the oldest one." Marie finally told me the truth that night. Her family, our family, had a dark past. "My great-grandparents cleared this land," she said. "They moved graves, disturbed the dead. The old folks say they brought a curse on our bloodline." We were sitting on the porch, watching the mist rise off the water when we saw it. Standing at the edge of our dock was a figure too tall to be human. Its fur glowed white in the moonlight. Its face was a nightmare, a wolf's skull with eyes like burning coals. It raised a long, clawed hand and pointed directly at our house. A voice that sounded like stones grinding together carried across the water, "One or all." Then it was gone, melting into the mist like it had never been there. But we all heard it. The Rougarou had given us its terms. One of us, or all of us. The night after the Rougarou showed itself, none of us slept. We sat in the living room, lamps burning, jumping at every creak and splash from outside. JB kept looking out the window, almost like he was hoping to see it again. That worried me more than anything. "What did it mean, one or all?" Marie asked, her voice shaking. "It wants a sacrifice," Eva said. Her old hands trembled as she made more protection charms. Been that way since the old times. The Rougarou takes one to spare the rest. Around dawn, we heard a boat motor. Hope sparked in my chest. Maybe help was coming. I grabbed my shotgun and went to the door. What I saw made my blood freeze. It was Dr. Holloway's boat, but the man steering it wasn't Holloway. Not anymore. His clothes hung on a body too thin to be human. His face was pulled tight against his skull, and his eyes glowed with the same coal-fire light as the Rougarou's. Behind him, standing in the boat, were 3 more figures, walking skeletons with bits of flesh still clinging to their bones. "He's coming for a choice," Holloway's voice called out, but it wasn't his voice anymore. It was deeper, older. "Choose. One to give, or he takes all to feed." Marie's Aunt Ava pushed past me onto the porch. She carried a small cloth bag in her hands. "You go back to your master," she shouted. "Tell him Ava Thibodeau ain't afraid." She threw the bag into the water, between our dock and the boat. The water bubbled and steamed, and a wall of thick mist rose up like a barrier. "That won't hold long," Eva said, suddenly looking every bit of her 71 years. "Get what you need, we're leaving." As we rushed to pack, Eva collapsed. Her breathing came in short gasps. "The spell," she whispered when Marie knelt beside her, "takes life to make, gave mine to buy time." She died an hour later, holding Marie's hand. We didn't have time to bury her properly. The mist barrier was already thinning, and we could hear bone-like fingers tapping on the stilts beneath our house. Father Melançon arrived unexpectedly as we were loading the boat. His face was pale but determined. "I've been researching," he said. "I know how to bless this place properly now." He refused to leave with us, saying he would perform the ritual to buy us more time. I tried to argue, but he just shook his head. "My faith wavered, Thad," he said quietly. "This is how I make it right." As we pushed away in our boat, we could hear him inside, praying in Latin. Then there was a flash of light from the windows, a scream that didn't sound human or animal, and silence. We were halfway across the wide part of the bayou when JB suddenly stood up. "I should be the one," he said. His young face looked older somehow, decided. "Grandpa's journal says the Rougarou chooses people to serve it. If I volunteer, maybe it'll leave the rest of you alone." "No!" Marie and I shouted together. I grabbed his arm, but he pulled away. "I've been dreaming about it, Dad," he said. "It's already chosen me." Before I could stop him, he jumped into the water. He was a strong swimmer already stroking back toward our house. That's when Deputy Arsenault's police boat appeared from around the bend. He had 2 other officers with him. "Got your message," he called. "We're getting you all to safety." I pointed frantically toward JB swimming away. "My boy, he's going." "Back!" The deputy swung his boat around, but as they approached JB, the water around them erupted. Bony hands reached up, grabbing the sides of the police boat. The Walking Dead pulled themselves aboard. I heard gunshots, then screams. "Go!" Marie shouted at me. "I'll get JB. Take Celeste." I hesitated, torn between my son and daughter. "Daddy," Celeste said, her voice strangely calm. "I can see it now. The Rougarou has to go back to where it came from, the oldest burial ground. At sunrise. That's when it's weak." Marie was already in the water, swimming after JB. I made my decision. "I'm going after them," I told Celeste. "Get to Beau's old camp, hide there." "No, Daddy," she said, gripping my arm. "I know what to do. Mama told me about the old rituals. I can see the true paths." The look in her eyes was so old, so knowing, that it scared me more than the Rougarou itself. Together, we headed toward the ancient burial ground Celeste had pointed out. As we approached, I saw Marie and JB already. There, JB was kneeling on the ground, his body shaking like he was having a fit. Marie was trying to pull him away. And there, standing tall among the weathered grave markers, was the Rougarou. Up close, it was even more terrifying. 9 feet tall, at least with patches of white fur over a body that seemed part skeleton, part beast. Its skull face turned toward us as we approached. "You brought the seer child," it said in that grinding voice. "Good. The boy begins his change. The woman will follow. You will be last, fisherman." "No," I said, raising my shotgun, though I knew it would do no good. "This ends now." Marie looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Thad, I found out. My ancestors didn't just disturb the graves. They bound the Rougarou here to guard their secrets. It can be bound again, but it needs a willing sacrifice," Celeste finished. "Someone with the sight, like me." "No!" Marie and I both shouted. But Marie suddenly understood something I didn't. She grabbed my arm. "Not Celeste," she whispered. "You, Thad, with my help. My blood has the power, and your will has the strength." As the sun began to rise, Marie quickly explained what we needed to do. A binding ritual that would trap the Rougarou in its burial ground. Not forever, but for years, maybe decades. I didn't hesitate. "Get Celeste and JB out. I'll hold it here." Marie's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. She knew as well as I did that there was no other way. As Marie pulled our children toward the boat, I faced the Rougarou. It seemed to smile, its bone face gleaming in the first light of dawn. "You cannot bind what you do not understand," it growled. "Maybe not," I said, "but I understand one thing. You don't get my family." I began the ritual Marie had quickly taught me, speaking words in Old French that I didn't fully understand. The ground beneath us trembled. The Rougarou howled and lunged toward me, but seemed to hit an invisible wall. The last thing I remember is the sunlight breaking through the cypress trees, the sound of our boat motor fading in the distance, and the burning pain as the ritual took hold, binding the Rougarou and me together in this ancient, unholy ground. I don't know how long I've been here now. Days and nights blend together in this place between life and death. The Rougarou is bound, and so am I. Sometimes I can still see glimpses of the outside world, like looking through a foggy window. I saw Marie get the children to safety. She was so brave, my Marie. She didn't look back, though I know she wanted to. She understood what my sacrifice meant. JB recovered slowly. Whatever connection the Rougarou had started with him weakened when I completed the binding ritual. But he still has nightmares. I can feel them sometimes, reaching across whatever separates us. Celeste is the one I worry about most. The sight that was just beginning in her has grown stronger. Marie tries to help her control it, teach her the protective magic that has passed through her family for generations. But Celeste sees me sometimes. She'll stand at the edge of the bayou and wave, though there's nothing there for normal eyes to see. The Rougarou isn't gone. Neither am I. We're trapped together in this burial ground, locked in a never-ending standoff. It whispers to me sometimes, telling me how it will escape when the binding weakens, how it will find my family again. I don't answer. I just hold on tighter. Marie has moved the family to her cousin's place in town, but she comes back to the bayou sometimes. She leaves offerings at the edge of the burial ground, little bundles like the ones Eva used to make. They help strengthen the binding. Deputy Ardenu survived that night, though the other officers didn't. He doesn't come out to these parts of the bayou anymore. No one does, except Marie and occasionally Celeste. Father Melançon's body was never found. The church listed him as missing, but locals whisper that he walks the bayou at night, continuing his prayers, trying to make up for his moment of lost faith. Dr. Holloway's story became a warning told in whispers. Don't go looking for the Rougarou, or you'll end up like that professor from the city. As for me, I'll hold this creature as long as I can. Years will pass. Celeste will grow up. The binding will eventually weaken. They always do, according to the old stories. When that day comes, I hope my family's ready, because the Rougarou is patient. It has existed for hundreds of years, feeding on bones and souls. A decade or two is nothing to it. Sometimes, on quiet nights when the mist rises thick from the water, locals say they can hear strange sounds coming from the old burial ground. A man's voice and something else, something not human, seemingly locked in conversation. Some say it's just the wind in the cypress trees or bullfrogs calling to each other. But those who know better leave offerings at the edge of the water. Little charms of protection, reminders that someone still remembers the sacrifice made there. Marie is teaching Celeste everything she knows. The girl is stronger than I ever was, with a power in her blood that comes from generations of healers. When the Rougarou breaks free, she might be the only one who can bind it again. That's the curse of our family. Not just the Rougarou itself, but the responsibility to keep it contained. One generation makes the sacrifice, and the next prepares to do the same. As for JB, he's quieter now, more serious. He helps his mother and sister with their preparations, though he doesn't have their gifts. What he does have is determination. He's promised to protect Celeste until she's ready to face what's coming. I'm proud of them all, and as long as I can hold this creature here in the shadows of the bayou, I will. Every day the Rougarou remains bound is another day my family lives in peace. So if you find yourself in the Louisiana bayou and hear strange sounds across the water or see shapes moving through the mist that don't look quite right, turn your boat around. Go back to solid ground and bright lights. Some stories aren't meant to be explored. Some creatures should stay in the shadows, and remember, even monsters can be bound by love and sacrifice, at least for a while. 5 years have passed since that night in the bayou. Marie has kept her promise to visit the burial ground every month, leaving her charms and saying prayers that keep the binding strong. Our old fishing camp still stands on its stilts, empty and slowly rotting. No one will buy it, even though Marie has tried to sell. Word gets around in small places like this. People know something bad happened there. Celeste is 17 now. Her power has grown so much that sometimes it scares me, even from where I am. She can see things others can't. Not just me and the Rougarou, but all the spirits that wander. These waters, the bone servants, still roam the deeper parts of the bayou, but they keep their distance from her. JB is 20. He joined the sheriff's department as soon as he was old enough, working under Deputy Arsenault. The deputy never talks about what happened that night, but he took JB under his wing anyway. Together, they make sure people stay away from the dangerous parts of the bayou. Marie has aged more than 5 years should allow. Keeping the binding strong takes a toll on her. Her hair has gone grey, and her hands shake sometimes, but her eyes are still sharp, and her will is unbroken. Last month, something changed. I felt it first, a loosening, like a knot starting to unravel. The Rougarou felt it too. It howled, for the first time in years, a sound that carried across the water to town. Celeste came alone the next day, standing at the edge of the burial ground with a serious look on her young face. "Daddy," she said, though I couldn't answer, "it's starting to break free, isn't it?" I wished I could tell her no, that everything was fine, but we both knew the truth. She sat down on a fallen log and opened a small notebook, her grandmother's recipe book for charms and spells, passed down through generations. "Mom's getting weaker," she said quietly. "The binding is taking too much from her. I need to learn how to do it myself." I felt a surge of fear and pride all mixed together. My little girl, preparing to face the same monster that took her father. "JB found something in the parish records," she continued, flipping through the notebook, "about a stronger binding ritual, one that might hold the Rougarou for 100 years instead of just a decade. Hope flickered in me, but I knew better than to trust it completely. Old magic always comes with a price." "The problem is," Celeste said, "it needs more than one person with the sight. It needs 3. Mom, me, and—" She trailed off, looking out over the water. "We've been searching for someone else with the gift. Dr. Holloway had a student who's been writing to us. She studies the same things he did, but she's smart enough to be careful. She believes us." I wished I could warn her to be careful. "The Rougarou is clever. It has lured people here before, making them think they could help, only to add them to its collection of bones." As if reading my thoughts, Celeste smiled sadly. "Don't worry, Daddy, I'm being careful. JB checks everyone who comes to see us. And I can see things now, really see them. No one can hide what they truly are from me anymore." She stood up, brushing leaves from her jeans. "The student is coming next week. Her name is Lisa. She's had dreams about this place her whole life, though she's never been here. That's a sign, Mum says." The wind picked up suddenly, making the cypress trees sway. The Rougarou was listening. I could feel its hunger growing. "I should go," Celeste said, looking around nervously. "It's getting stronger, isn't it? I can feel it pushing against whatever holds it." She left another charm on the log, this one made by her own hands, not Marie's. It glowed faintly in my vision, stronger than her mother's recent offerings. That night, the Rougarou spoke to me for the first time in years. "The girl child returns," it said, its voice like gravel. "Her blood is stronger than her mother's. When I break free, I will take her first." "You won't break free," I told it, though I wasn't as sure as I sounded. It made a sound like laughter. "The binding weakens. Can you not feel it, fisherman? Your wife's strength fades. Your daughter is not ready. Soon I will walk the bayou again." I didn't answer, but I knew it was partly right. The binding was weakening. I could feel it in the way the Rougarou moved more freely in our shared prison, in the way it could now speak without effort. A week later, I sensed Celeste returning. She wasn't alone. 2 other women were with her, Marie, looking frailer than ever, and a stranger who must be Lisa, the student. She was young, maybe 25, with nervous eyes that darted around, as if she could almost see the things Celeste saw. "This is it," Celeste told her. "Can you feel it?" Lisa nodded slowly. "There's pressure here, like the air before a storm." "That's them," Marie said weakly. "My Thad and the creature, locked together." They began unpacking a bag. Candles, small bottles, a knife that made me nervous. The new ritual, I realized. They were going to attempt it now. The Rougarou sensed it too. I felt it gathering its strength, pushing hard against our bonds. "Stop!" I tried to warn them, but they couldn't hear me. As they began setting up for the ritual, the water near the shore started to bubble. Bone-white hands broke the surface, the servants coming to protect their master. "Mom!" Celeste shouted, pointing. The three women backed away from the water's edge. Lisa looked terrified, but she didn't run. "We need to hurry," Marie said. They formed a circle, holding hands. Marie began to chant in Old French, words I recognized from the first binding. Celeste joined in, her young voice stronger than her mother's. After a moment, Lisa added her voice too, uncertain at first, then with growing confidence. The Rougarou howled in rage. The bone servants clawed their way onto shore, moving with jerky steps toward the women. I gathered every bit of strength I had, focusing it on holding the creature back. This was my family's one chance at a permanent solution. I couldn't let it stop them. The air grew thick and heavy. The chanting grew louder. The bone servants reached the edge of the circle and stopped, as if hitting an invisible wall. A light began to glow between the three women, pulsing with each word of the chant. The Rougarou thrashed and fought against me, its rage like a physical force. "You cannot hold me forever, fisherman," it snarled. "I don't need forever," I answered. "Just long enough." The light between the women suddenly shot upward, then down into the ground of the burial site. The earth shook, the bone servants collapsed into piles of ordinary bones, and the Rougarou screamed, a sound so terrible I would have covered my ears if I could. The binding snapped into place like chains made of light, wrapping around the creature tighter than before. When it was done, Marie collapsed. Celeste and Lisa caught her between them. "Did it work?" Lisa asked, her voice shaking. Celeste looked directly at where I stood with the bound Rougarou. For a moment I thought she could see me clearly. "Yes," she said, "it worked. Look at the water." The surface of the bayou, which had been bubbling and churning, was now perfectly still, like glass. "It's bound for 100 years, Marie said, weakly. "Or so the ritual promises." "And my father?" Celeste asked. Marie shook her head sadly. "He remains as guardian. That part cannot be changed." I felt a moment of sadness, knowing I would never truly return to them. But seeing them safe, that was enough. As they helped Marie back to their boat, Celeste turned one last time. "We'll still visit, Daddy," she called out. "We won't forget." And I knew she wouldn't. The curse of our family wasn't just fighting monsters. It was remembering, keeping watch, passing down the knowledge needed to bind the darkness when it eventually returns, because it always returns. That's the one thing I've learned in my years guarding the Rougarou. Evil has patience. 100 years is nothing to something as old as this creature. But for now, the bayou is quiet again. The bone servants are gone, and my family can live without fear, at least until the next generation must take up the watch. My name is Ray Coleman. I'm 41 years old, and until 3 months ago I was the supervisor at the Pinecrest lumber mill. That all changed when they shut down operations and left half the county without jobs. I remember the day I came home and told Patty we were going to move to my grandfather's old cabin in the Cascades. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "For how long?" she asked, gripping the edge of our kitchen counter. "A year," I said. "Maybe longer, until we figure things out." Patty's face fell. She loves her job teaching 3rd grade at Oak Ridge Elementary. The kids adore her. "Ray, we can't just disappear into the woods. What about the kids' school? What about my job?" Danny, our 17-year-old, stormed in right as we were arguing. When he heard the plan, he kicked the kitchen chair so hard it left a dent in the wall. "No way, I'm not missing my senior year. All my friends are here. The football team needs me." Only Amy, our 14-year-old, seemed excited. She's always been my little nature girl, collecting bugs and pressing leaves into her journals. "Will there be wolves, Dad?" she asked, eyes bright with wonder. It struck me as odd then, her fascination. "With wolves?" I should have paid more attention. Susan, our youngest at 11, just hugged her stuffed rabbit tighter and asked in her small voice, "Is it scary there, Daddy?" "No, sweetie," I lied. "It's beautiful." 6 weeks later, we packed everything. We could fit into our station wagon and my old pickup truck. The cabin had been empty since my grandfather vanished in '54. I'd only visited once as a boy, but I remembered the tall trees, the creek with clear, cold water, and the feeling of being completely free. As we drove up the winding logging road, 45 miles from the nearest town, I felt something I hadn't felt since losing my job: hope. This was our chance to get back to basics, to be self-sufficient, to show my family what really matters. I had no idea I was driving them straight into a nightmare. The cabin wasn't what I remembered from my childhood. The roof leaked in 3 places. Mice had chewed through the cupboards, and the generator made a sound like it was dying, but it was ours. "It has character," Patty said, trying to smile as she wiped decades of dust from the kitchen counter. Danny refused to unpack. "This is temporary," he kept saying. "I'm not staying here." I caught him studying the old logging maps, planning his escape route back to civilization. Amy spent that first week exploring every inch of our 320 acres. She'd come back with pockets full of interesting rocks and stories about deer trails she'd found. It was Susan who first heard the wolves. "Daddy," she whispered one night, shaking me awake. "Someone's calling my name outside." I listened. The night was quiet except for the wind in the pines. "It's just the wind, sweetie. Go back to sleep." 3 nights later, we all heard it, the howling. It wasn't like wolf calls I'd heard before. These sounded almost like words. They echoed through the valley, making the hair on my arms stand up. "That's not normal," Patty said, clutching her coffee mug the next morning. "Wolves don't sound like that." 2 weeks after we arrived, Frank Delacroix showed up on our doorstep. He was a leathery old man, with a French-Canadian accent so thick I had to ask him to repeat himself half the time. "You Coleman?" he asked, leaning on our porch rail. "I knew your grandfather." Frank lived 20 miles north, the closest thing we had to a neighbor. He brought us fresh eggs and helped me fix the generator. As he was leaving, he grabbed my arm, his eyes suddenly serious. "Listen to me. When the harvest moon comes, keep your family inside. Les loups-garous, they hunt then." "The what?" I asked. "The wolf men," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They've been in these mountains longer than people. Your grandfather knew." I laughed it off. Just an old man's superstition. The next day I found massive paw prints circling our cabin, way too big for a normal wolf. Danny tried to leave a week later, packed a backpack and started hiking toward the main road. He came back 6 hours later, white as a sheet, his jeans torn. "Something followed me," he said, gulping water from the kitchen sink. "For miles. I never saw it, but it was there, always just behind me." That night, Amy woke up screaming. Her 3rd nightmare that week. "I was running with them," she sobbed, into Patty's shoulder. "I was running on all 4s, and I liked it, Mom. I liked how it felt." In the morning, I found dirt under her fingernails and tiny spots of blood on her pillow. "Probably just a nosebleed," Patty said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. When Dr. Sarah Mitchell showed up, I was actually relieved to see another person. She was studying wolf behavior in the Cascades and had heard we'd seen some unusual activity. "The pack in this area is behaving strangely," she explained, setting up recording equipment near our property line. "They're showing signs of intelligence that's, well, it's not documented in any research." "What kind of intelligence?" I asked. "They set traps," she said simply, "and they seem to communicate in ways wolves shouldn't be able to." Susan started, spending more time alone, whispering to herself. When I asked her who she was talking to, she just smiled. "The voices in the trees, Daddy. They tell me secrets." Pastor Muller's monthly visit should have been comforting. He drove up from town to hold services for the isolated families in the area. But when he tried to bless our cabin, the strangest thing happened. The small bottle of holy water in his hand began to bubble and steam. When he pressed his silver cross against our front door, he yanked his hand back with a cry. His palm was red and blistered, like he'd touched a hot stove. "There's something wrong with this place, Ray," he said, his voice shaking. "Something unholy." The final warning came from old Pete Morrison. He showed up one rainy afternoon, leaning on a gnarled walking stick, his white beard soaked. "You're Coleman's grandson," he said. It wasn't a question. I invited him in, made him coffee. He stared at my children with sad eyes. "Your grandfather didn't disappear," he told me when the kids were out of earshot. "He was taken. The pack has been feeding on your bloodline for generations." "What pack?" I asked, feeling cold despite the fire in the hearth. "The ones that walk like men when they choose," he said. "They're testing you now, watching, learning your weaknesses." That night our radio died mid-broadcast. The generator failed again, and as the first snow began to fall, cutting us off from the logging roads, I realized we were truly alone. Except for the eyes I could feel watching us from the dark edge of the forest. Dr. Mitchell was supposed to check in with us every Tuesday. When she didn't show up, I told myself it was just the weather. The early snow had made the roads tricky. 3 days later, Patty spotted something dragging itself across our front yard at dawn. It was Dr. Mitchell, but not like we'd last seen her. Her body was twisted, her face stretched in a way that wasn't quite human anymore. Patty and I carried her inside while the kids watched from the windows, their faces pale. "They bit me," she whispered, her voice raspy and strange. Her arm had a wound unlike anything I'd seen. Not just a bite, but something that seemed to be spreading under her skin like dark roots. "They're not wolves, Ray. They're something else. We need to get you to a hospital," I said, already knowing it was impossible with the roads snowed in. Her eyes, now yellow instead of brown, locked onto mine. "Kill me," she begged. "Before I finish changing, before I hurt you." Patty gasped, but Dr. Mitchell grabbed her hand. "They hunt families, test them first, then pick them off one by one." We locked her in the workshop that night. By morning, her screams didn't sound human anymore. Things started disappearing after that. Tools from the shed, food from our storage. Each time the locks were undamaged, but items were gone. They were showing us they could get in any time they wanted. Danny changed next. He tried to hike out again, desperate to get help after what happened to Dr. Mitchell. He came back with a bite on his leg that wouldn't stop bleeding. "Something grabbed me," he said, his voice hollow. "It spoke to me, Dad. It knew my name." Within days, Danny's eyes started changing color. He became hungry all the time. I caught him eating raw meat from the freezer, blood dripping down his chin. One morning in late October, Frank didn't show up with our monthly supplies. I broke every promise I'd made to Patty and drove the treacherous logging road to his cabin. I found him sitting at his radio, his throat torn out. On the wall behind him, written in what could only be his blood, was a message. "They are ours. Now!" When I got back to our cabin, something was different about Amy. She'd always been the one who loved the outdoors, but now she wouldn't come inside until after dark. Her clothes were constantly muddy and she smelled like wet animal. "I know what they are, Dad," she told me one night, her voice oddly calm. "They're not monsters. They're just different. They want us to join them." "Amy, honey, that's crazy." "Talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is it?" she asked, and for a moment I swear her teeth looked sharper. "They say we're already family. They've been waiting for us to come home." Pastor Muller returned in early November, his truck loaded with crosses, silver items, and what he called protective charms. His face looked gaunt, like he hadn't slept in days. "This is worse than I thought, Ray," he said, nailing silver crosses above each door and window. "These creatures, they're not just animals. Some of them used to be human. What do you mean, used to be? Patty asked, though I think we both already knew. The pack grows by conversion, not birth, he explained. Every person they take becomes one of them. That's why sacred objects don't work well here. There's still human souls mixed in with whatever else they are. That night, something large and powerful slammed against our cabin walls, over and over. We huddled in the center of the living room while Pastor Muller prayed, his voice growing more desperate with each impact. By morning, every silver cross had been torn down, and Pastor Muller's Bible was shredded on the porch. Old Pete showed, up again, carrying an ancient-looking rifle. "They're coming soon," he said. "I've seen the signs before." "What signs?" I asked. "Animals fleeing the area. Strange formations of stones and bones in the forest. And they're getting bolder, showing themselves in daylight. That afternoon, as if to prove Pete right, I saw one of them clearly for the first time. It stood at the edge of our clearing, over 7 feet tall, walking on 2 legs like a man, but covered in silver-black fur. Its face was wolf-like, but the eyes were thinking, watching, planning. It raised a clawed hand and pointed, directly at Susan, who stood frozen by my side. That night, old Pete insisted on keeping watch outside. We found him the next morning, torn apart on our front porch. His rifle lay beside him, unfired. "They're too fast," Danny said, staring at Pete's body with an expression that wasn't quite sadness. Something was changing in my son, something I couldn't stop. Susan started talking back to the voices only she could hear. I'd find her by the windows at night, whispering to the darkness outside. "What are they telling you?" I asked, dreading the answer. "They say we belong to them," she replied. "They say we've always belonged to them, and they're coming to collect what's theirs." Amy disappeared the next night. We searched for hours, calling her name until our voices gave out. She came back 3 days later, but I knew immediately she wasn't my daughter anymore. She walked differently, moved differently. When she smiled, her teeth were too sharp, and her eyes reflected the firelight like an animal's. "They're beautiful, Dad," she said, her voice eerily calm, "and so strong. They want all of us. It doesn't have to hurt." That's when I realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about keeping what was left of my family human. Dr. Mitchell escaped from the workshop during the night. We found the door ripped off its hinges from the inside. "We have to find her," Patty insisted, loading the shotgun I'd brought for hunting. "She's sick. She needs help." We found her in the clearing behind the cabin. She was halfway between human and something else. Fur had grown in patches across her skin. Her hands were twisted into claws, and when she opened her mouth to speak, her teeth were long and sharp. "I can't stop it," she said, her words slurred around her changing mouth. "The hunger is too strong. Please." She looked at Patty with pleading eyes. My wife had always been the gentler one between us, but in that moment she was steel. She raised the shotgun. "I'm sorry," Patty whispered, and pulled the trigger. That night, the harvest moon rose full and orange over the mountains. Danny locked himself in the bathroom, screaming in pain. The sounds he made, they weren't human anymore. "We have to help him," Patty cried, pounding on the door. "That's not our son in there," I said, though saying the words out loud broke something inside me. When the bathroom door finally splintered open, what came out walked on all fours. It had Danny's eyes, somewhere deep in a face that was more wolf than human. It looked at us, and for just a second I saw recognition there. My son, trapped inside a monster's body. Then it crashed through the window and disappeared into the night. Pastor Muller came back the next morning. His truck was dented and scratched, like something had tried to stop him from reaching us. "I brought help," he said, opening his trunk, to reveal silver weapons, containers of blessed oil, and a small leather-bound book. "Ancient ways to fight them. It won't save those already turned. but it might protect those who are still human. He performed a blessing on the cabin that took hours. Strange words in Latin, circles of salt around the building, symbols painted on the doors in oil. "This will hold them back," he said when he finished, his face dripping with sweat despite the cold. "But only until dawn. Then you need to get Susan and leave this place." "What about Amy and Danny?" Patty asked. The pastor couldn't meet her eyes. "I'm sorry. They're part of the pack now." That night was the worst. They came in force. Massive wolf-like creatures surrounding our cabin, howling words that sounded almost like English. Among them were forms I recognized. Danny's tall, lanky shape, Amy's smaller figure moving with terrible grace. "They're calling me," Susan whispered, pressing her hands against the window glass. "They say I'm special, that I can hear them, better than anyone." Pastor Muller stood at the front door, reading from his book, a silver cross held high. When the first of the creatures slammed against the door, he didn't move. "Stay back," he shouted to us. "The blessing will hold." It didn't. The door exploded inward, and something huge and dark rushed inside. Pastor Muller screamed once before. They dragged him out into the night. We barricaded ourselves in the back bedroom, Patty, Susan and me. The shotgun had 3 shells left. "They want Susan," Patty said, her voice strangely calm as the sounds of howling grew louder. "They've been calling her since we got here." Outside our bedroom door, something scratched gently against the wood. "Susan," it called in Amy's voice, but wrong somehow. "Susan, come out. It doesn't hurt. We can be together forever." "Amy?" Susan called back, taking a step toward the door. Patty grabbed her. "That's not your sister anymore, honey." The door cracked down the middle as something powerful hit it from the other side. "Last chance," the thing with Amy's voice said. "Join us willingly, or we take you anyway." The second hit broke the door completely. What stood there looked like Amy, if Amy had been stretched and reshaped into something built for hunting. Behind her, I could see more shapes, more yellow, eyes glowing in the darkness of our cabin. "No!" Patty shouted, pushing Susan behind her. "You can't have her!" Amy, the thing that used to be Amy, lunged forward. Patty fired the shotgun, the blast deafening in the small room. Amy flew backward, but got up almost immediately, a wound in her chest already closing. "Mom," Amy said, sounding briefly like my little girl again, confusion in her yellow eyes. Then they hardened and she leaped. I'll never forget the sound Patty made when Amy's jaws closed on her throat. Not a scream, but a small, surprised gasp, as if she couldn't believe her own daughter could do this. "Run!" I shouted to Susan, firing the second shell at the creatures now pouring through the doorway. "The cellar! Go!" Susan bolted for the trapdoor in the kitchen floor while I fired the last shell. I followed her, slamming the heavy cellar door shut behind us and sliding the bolt home. In the darkness, Susan was crying. "What happened to Amy? To Danny?" "They're gone, sweetheart," I said, holding her tight. "But you're still here. We're going to make it." Above us, the creatures tore the cabin apart looking for us. I could hear them calling Susan's name, sometimes in Amy's voice, sometimes in Danny's, sometimes in voices I didn't recognize. "They say I'm the one they really want," Susan whispered, "because I can hear them. They've been in my head since we got here." The cellar door began to splinter. "Susan," I said, knowing we had minutes at most, "you need to run. There's the old tunnel your great-grandfather dug, leading to the creek. Follow it, then head downstream to the main road." "What about you, Daddy?" I kissed her forehead. "I'm going to make sure they don't follow you." The door wouldn't hold much longer. I found my grandfather's old dynamite box, still there after all these years. He'd used it for clearing stumps when he first built the place. "Go now," I told Susan, pushing her toward the tunnel entrance. "Don't look back. Don't stop for anyone or anything." "I love you, Daddy," she said, and then she was gone, swallowed by the dark tunnel. I waited until I heard the cellar door finally give way. Yellow eyes peered down at me. So many eyes. Among them I saw Amy and Danny, my children who weren't my children anymore. "She's gone," I said, holding up the lighter in one hand, the dynamite in the other. "And you're not following her." The last thing I remember is Amy's face, for just a moment looking scared, looking human again, before I flicked the lighter. "My name is Susan Coleman. I'm 12 years old now. I've been alone for almost 5 months. The explosion destroyed our cabin and everyone in it. I felt it shake the ground as I ran through the tunnel. When I came out by the creek, I saw flames reaching into the night sky. I heard howls, angry, pained howls. I ran all night following the creek just like Daddy told me. By morning, I reached the main logging road. A truck driver found me walking there, half frozen and unable to speak. The people in town were kind. They gave me warm clothes and hot food. They asked me questions I couldn't answer. How could I tell them what really happened? About Amy's teeth or Danny's eyes? About the things that used to be my family? I told them there was a gas leak, an explosion, that my family didn't make it out. They believed me. Why wouldn't they? Monsters don't exist in the real world, except they do. I still hear them sometimes, calling my name when the moon is full, whispers just at the edge of my thoughts. "You're still ours," they say. "We're patient. We'll wait." I live with a foster family now. The Martins. They're nice people with a big house at the edge of town. Mr. Martin got a job at the reopened lumber mill. They have a son my age named Tyler. They want to adopt me. Last week, Mr. Martin came home excited. He'd bought some land up in the mountains, an old property going cheap because of its troubled history. "It's 320 acres with a creek running through it," he said over dinner. "We can build a cabin there, get back to nature." Mrs. Martin smiled. "Wouldn't that be wonderful, Susan? Fresh air, forest all around us." I felt cold all over. "Where exactly is this land?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Beautiful spot. In the Cascades," Mr. Martin said. "About 45 miles from town, up the old logging roads." I tried to warn them. I really did. I told them about the wolves in those mountains, about how they hunt families. They patted my head and shared worried looks. "It's just bad memories, sweetie," Mrs. Martin said. "We'll make new, happy ones." Yesterday, I found Tyler looking at maps of the property. "Dad says we'll move up there this fall," he said, "just in time for the harvest moon. Isn't that cool?" I didn't answer. What could I say? Last night, I heard howling outside my window. Not from the mountains, but close, right in our backyard. I looked out and saw eyes shining in the darkness, yellow eyes. And for just a second, I thought I saw Amy standing there and Danny beside her. They looked almost like they used to before. The change. They waved at me, smiling with 2 sharp teeth. The Martins didn't hear anything when I told them about it this morning. "Just a bad dream," Mrs. Martin said, kissing my forehead. "Once we get up to our new place in the mountains, you'll sleep much better. It's so peaceful there." I've packed. A small bag, just essentials. Tonight, when everyone's asleep, I'm going to leave. I'll try to find my way to another town, somewhere far from here, far from those mountains. I want to believe I can escape them. But deep down, I know the truth. They're patient. They've been hunting my family for generations. And sometimes, late at night when the moon is bright, I feel my teeth aching. I catch myself listening for those voices in the forest. Sometimes I even want to answer back. I think about what Amy said before she changed completely. It doesn't hurt. We can be together forever. Maybe that's the most frightening thing of all. Not that they'll find me again, but that part of me is waiting to be found.